Hey, Mayor. Speaking of the mayor.
Oh.
Good evening. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out to the board meeting tonight. Before we open the meeting, I would like to ask for a moment of silence for a former student we had that has passed away, Mr. Avery Wisman. If possible, let's have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. With that being said, this may be the only meeting you ever see me run because we don't have a chairman in place right now. So the superintendent never opens a meeting. The chairman usually does. So I want to, again, welcome everyone for being here and call to order the regular board meeting for the month of January of Woodford County Public Schools. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and open the floor for a nomination for a chair.
I'd like to nominate Miss McHale.
Have a nomination for Ms. McHale.
Second.
Second. Okay. With that, I think we need a vote. We'll start.
Should we have discussion first?
I'm new to this one. Grant, should we have discussion first?
You can.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure if anyone had any discussion about, before we voted, but typically we do the motion, the second, and then discussion, so.
And this is new to me. I'm not sure of the process. So I guess we do need a vote then. We'll do a roll call vote starting with Ms. Springate.
I vote nay.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Ms. McHale, I will now turn the gavel over to you and the meeting.
And the meeting. All right. I guess bear with me as this is my first one. Obviously, I've attended a bunch, but it's a little different, I think, when you're in charge of running the meeting. So our next item on the agenda is to, elect a vice chair.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Jerry Springate as vice chair.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion?
Well, I've got just been thinking about qualities that would make a good leader, vice chair, chair of the board. And I'd just like to share that Ms. Springate began her board service in 2011, making her the most experienced member of our team. She holds a level 5 certification, which is the highest level achievable with the KSBA. I believe that her education and training make her uniquely qualified to serve as vice chair. Her knowledge of board policy and school finance are next level and are attributes that are critical as we move forward as a district. And I'd ask you to join me in supporting the motion to select Ms. Springate as our next vice chair. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, so I guess we'll do the same thing, Mr. Atkins.
Yeah, I would think so.
Ms. Springate?
Aye.
Nay.
Nay?
Nay.
Aye.
And the motion does not pass by a vote of 3-2. Any other nominations for vice chair? I would nominate Ms. Glass.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Okay, Ms. Springate?
Nay.
Aye.
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 Nay.
Okay, the motion passes 3-2. The next item on the agenda is to designate a school board secretary.
That's, yeah,
So,
usually that falls to the superintendent.
okay, so that usually falls to the superintendent. Mr. Chenoweth, how do we nominate that? What do we do with that?
You can just make a motion, if somebody wants to make a motion for him to serve as secretary, you can just make that motion.
Okay,
I make a motion for Mr. Adkins to serve as school board secretary.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 And that was 5 ayes, so no opposed. The motion passes 5-0. Item 5 is to designate the school board treasurer. I assume that that is typically Mr. Smith? Okay. So same process, any nominations?
I make a motion to designate Mr. Shane Smith as the school board treasurer.
Second.
Okay. And Ms. Cooper, do you need me to repeat? And I'm just realizing I haven't repeated any of the seconds and the motions. Okay. I will try to remember. Okay. Any discussion?
I just had something for Mr. Chenoweth. On this one, Mr. Chenoweth, I wasn't sure in the past if we did it by title. So nominate the superintendent, elect the superintendent, nominate the finance officer, elect the finance officer, just in case there's turnover, you don't have names associated with that. Does it matter one way or the other?
It does not. You can, if there is turnover, then you would just need to go through and elect a new treasurer, a new secretary, whatever that would be.
But if we just nominated them by their job position, we wouldn't have to necessarily come back and do a new election?
That's correct, but the board may not, if there was turnover in one of those positions, there might also be a reason to have somebody different serve as secretary or treasurer. So doing it by job position is, I would rather you do it by name.
Okay.
So that decision was available to you to make if there was turnover in one of those positions.
Sounds great, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll take a vote, please. All in favor?
Aye.
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 The motion passes 5-0. The next item is roll call, and we'll let the record show that we have all 5 members in person. So now we'll stand for the pledge. And if anybody doesn't know, the flag is on the back wall. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, item 8 is proposed amendments to the agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda tonight?
I was wondering with our principals here and everyone already here, when we get to the CSIP part of, we have them here for questions. If we could move that just behind recognitions, and that way that, they may not have to stay all night and they could still be available to answer questions. That's just an idea.
So that's under information items, number C, the school improvement plans?
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
So move that up to,
Up to just behind recognitions, would be right in front of E on, superintendent's.
okay,
D3.
Yep,
D3. Okay.
D3, yep.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we'll go to the superintendent remarks.
Excuse me. Like I said, I want to welcome everybody here. We've had a really good start back to school. We've not had any weather. That's always a positive. Our attendance seems to be looking up and picking up, so we know we've battled some sickness in the fall, and we've been very fortunate to be able to pick those things up and move forward. I think we had an academic meet this week, and from what I can tell, just the one that I know about, and am I still in your thunder on this one? Okay, I'll skip this one then. We've had a lot of athletics going on. Our teams are really working hard. We've been fairly successful. That's our winter sports, actually. I know our wrestling's and I know I'll leave somebody out. Middle school volleyball, our high school girls basketball, boys basketball to high school level, boys middle school basketball. There's just so many things that go on. I can't remember them all. So we got a lot of great things going on in the district here in Woodford County. Great things going on in the classroom. I was over at Mr. Reynolds' place this morning and had a chance to talk to some students. And just so happened, we've been talking about, Mr. Asher may have talked to you guys a little bit about in his last instructional discussion about a new program called iReady. So we're there, and I'm with a younger group. It's not second grade, probably third, maybe fourth, but they talk about iReady. And it's one of the pilot classes, Mr. Asher, and they're just on fire with this. They really like it. They tell me why, because I said, what do you think? We keep it? What do we do? Oh, yeah, we need to keep it. And the teacher explained that they were a part of the pilot program. So they're telling me why it's not as good, why it's better than MAP, and how MAP is kind of boring, and this is colorful and have songs and those types of things, but it'll still get us the same data we want. So it's always good to know that those great things are going on in the classroom. Mr. Asher, Miss Susan Tracy do a great job with our instruction, and my hat's off to you guys. And it shows when you walk into a classroom, you see what's going on. Hats off to our principals as well. They do the same kind of work. I mean, we're all here to work with kids, and we just make sure that we're all try to be on the same page with that. I had a chance to come over last week. The health science classes had a it wasn't necessarily a job fair, but it was a career information session, I guess, where they had researched careers they were interested in the health science fields, and it was awesome to get over and see those guys. And I was telling the board I got invited to and this is I don't have any stock in Cluckers, but I got invited to Cluckers tonight for dinner because a couple of the girls worked there and they wanted me to come over and check them out. So I'm trying to do that if we get out of here in time. But just a lot of great things going on in Woodford County, and we've been very blessed with the weather. But with that being said, I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Adkins. The next item is the good news report. Ms. Hash, we'll start with you.
Yes, of course. So, Mr. Adkins did already kind of hint to the academic team's success this weekend, but that's
Sorry.
okay. It made for good foreshadowing. I appreciate it. Basically, we had 2 big wins on both our high school and middle school levels. Both of them took home district championships this weekend, which is super duper exciting and means that they get to go to regionals. And as far as the high school level goes, I know that our future problem solving team got first place and first place in quick recall. So,
Ms. McCowan?
Okay, I've got a few things, so bear with me here. I'm trying to collect as much information as I can. But first off, I just wanted to say thank you to Hannah Hash for her service as the student representative on the board, since this is Board Member Appreciation Month. Thank you for all that you do and for representing your students, your fellow students. Thank you, too, to all of our district staff, Judge James Kay and Southside Elementary for hosting the swearing-in ceremony that Mr. Brickler and I participated in on January the 5th. It was a wonderful way to kick off duties as a board member, so thank you to all of those folks. I'd like to congratulate Diana Sharp. She's a junior here at WCHS, and she represented Woodford County at the state DYW, the Distinguished Young Woman Program, earlier this month. Diana received a fitness award and was named 4th runner-up, winning over $1,500 in scholarships. So we're really proud of her. Also, Peyton Whitaker, another one of our juniors at WCHS, competed in the Miss Kentucky County Fair pageant also earlier this month. She placed in the top 15 out of 74 contestants from all across the state. So congratulations to those young ladies. The WCHS marching band got to march in a parade at Disney World over Christmas break, so very excited for them to have had that opportunity. I'd like to say thank you to Journey Provisions for donating funds that helped clear lunch charges for 125 students recently. Several of our WCMS band students have been selected to perform with the 2023 District 7 Middle School Honors Band, so congratulations to all of those students. This month, the Woodford Leadership Academy, sponsored by the Woodford County Chamber of Commerce, began. We have 8 high school seniors participating and are thankful to our community partners for helping to make this happen for them. Thank you to all of our staff that worked so hard last month to help us get a warming center set up here at the high school for those that were affected by the extreme cold that we experienced. Congratulations as well to Kay Penn, our Director of Transportation, for being selected to serve on the 2024 School Bus Safety and Mechanical Specification Committee through the KDE. This committee will take suggestions and hear feedback from people across Kentucky who work in public school transportation. Thank you to our middle school and high school students that helped serve at the Martin Luther King Day celebration and breakfast. And also, congratulations to the Southside Academic Team for winning all 5 placements in language arts in the Woodford County Academic Team League. And congratulations to all the 5th graders at Huntertown Elementary for their outstanding work marketing, selling their products and services at the Entrepreneur Fair earlier this month. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McCowan. Ms. Glass?
Well, I decided this, since it's kind of the new calendar year, I wanted to start sharing in my good news report something funny or just quirky that we hear from students throughout our district. And I heard the perfect one today that I wanted to share with everyone. And I have permission from his parents to share. From a little North Sider, Mr. Henley. His dad said, "Did you have a good day at school today?" And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "Did you learn anything?" And he said, "Well, apparently not enough because they said I have to come back tomorrow." So I just want to share that and give you a laugh. That's all for tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Atkins, anything to add from your superintendent's remarks? Okay. All right. Well, I would like to welcome our 2 new school board members, Ms. McCowan, Mr. Brickler. We're thrilled to have you, and we're looking forward to working with both of you and really help the district move forward, and do good things for all of our kids. So welcome. And if you need anything, any questions, I know it can be a little daunting at first. Just reach out to any one of us, and we'll be happy to answer. We did do, I think, a couple of things over the last few weeks as a board and as the school district. I know there were a bunch of us that helped with the elected officials food drive over the weekend, and from what I saw, we collected about 2,000 pounds of food. So the food pantry has had an increased need, and I would just say thank you to everybody who came out and donated. Thank you to everybody who came out and collected. And for anybody that didn't get a chance to go to Kroger over the weekend, they do have the big blue bins that are out there all the time. So please, if you're able to make a donation, I know that anything would help them. So thank you for that. I was able to attend the Woodford County Chamber Luncheon Awards with some school administration members, and that was a really nice afternoon. It's good to work and meet people out in the communities. Everybody has wonderful things to say about Woodford County Schools. Everybody is happy to partner with us, and it was just a really great afternoon. So thank you for including me in that. Jacket Fest week is this week, right? We've got the big dance on Friday. And I would just ask for anybody who, again, is able, I know they're taking donations for refreshments. So there is a list, and I think there's a Sign Up Genius if you go on to Parent Square. And I know they need things like candy and soda and drinks and all that sort of stuff. And then from a project graduation perspective, we are continuing with our Old Kentucky chocolate fundraisers, garden flags, and yard signs. So I think all of that information is out on Facebook and Parent Square, so please check all of that out. And that is all that I have for tonight. Mr. Brickler?
All right. Well, first of all, since this is my first meeting, I just want to thank everyone for being here. And, I'm really looking forward to serving the community, listening to everyone. Good news-wise, I love the fact that my first meeting I came in and had a stack of cards that were drawn and written by children from the different schools and showing school board appreciation. I want to thank Southside especially because my daughter's 3rd grade class did a big stack, and so I want to thank Miss Carell, my daughter's 3rd grade teacher, for getting my daughter to write me a thank you card that she probably did begrudgingly, so I'll definitely frame that in the house. But other than that, really just looking forward to working with everyone and doing everything we can to support the community, the children, and the staff. That's all I got.
Thank you. Ms. Springate?
Yes, I marked a few off my list. This was a really good one. Lots of depth in this one. The two that I have left are, I would like to thank the Quarterback Club and President Chad Wells for their, everybody who worked for that donation of the football practice facility. I just can't say enough what it means to live in a community where people come together and can support a project and pull off a project that massive. It's just wonderful, and it says volumes about everybody who was involved in that. And then the second thing is just a note that on Wednesday at the Versailles Police Department, this Wednesday, the 25th, from 6 to 8, they're hosting a community town hall about coping with suicide. So I just wanted to put that out there, anybody that could benefit from that. So.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll move on to our instructional and equity report from Mr. Asher.
Thank you. Hello, we good? Josh, I have that slide show if you could put up, please. Welcome to our new members. As we talked about last month when I was up here, we were able to meet earlier in January. So I was able to catch them up on all those acronyms that we tend to use quite a bit. We had a great Q&A, I thought, over the course of over an hour. So I thought that was a good onboarding for the both of you. So welcome. 94th day of school. So 100th day is upon us. That's a big deal, especially at our elementary schools. So by my count, that'll be next Tuesday, I believe, or sometime next week. So getting close to that. That's a major mile marker in our school year. Last month I sat up here and went over the draft of the CDIP. Plan to come back this month, but I am going to table that and move that to next month. Are going to go back to the process. Thank you to Ms. McCown and Ms. McHale. Yes, thank you for being part of that. So stay tuned for communication from me and our review process for that, and I'll bring it back to the entire board hopefully next month. One thing that I did want to go a little more in depth on, which is part of our CDIP, and I've talked quite a bit about, is our Deeper Learning Initiative. This is a statewide initiative that comes with funding through our co-ops. We work with CKEC, which is Central Kentucky Educational Co-op, and we have, as I mentioned before, a team of deeper learning team comprised of teachers from all levels, elementary through high school, as well as a couple administrators. And I just wanted to go a little more in depth with what we are doing as a team and kind of giving you an idea of what you may see in the future coming from us. So use this slide here. I had mentioned this before. Ms. Springate, I know that you were there when Commissioner Glass kicked this off back in 2021 about United We Learn and the importance of a vibrant experience for every student and innovation in our schools, and most importantly, collaboration with our communities. Josh, if you would, thank you. State vision for that is some highlighted words there. The ability for all learners to transfer learning and apply it to new and complex situations. And then also it talks about being lifelong learners. So a lot of the competencies is a key word there. And what you will see, we've alluded to this a couple of times with our portrait of a learner, are those competencies outlined. We're not talking so much about an academic skill as we are a life skill. And if you could, Josh, go on to the next one. All of those based upon these deeper learning pillars. There are 4 that the state have defined. And Josh, if you would advance a couple more, please, it'll highlight. What we've chosen as focus areas are those competencies, or if you go back, we chose not to call ours Portrait of a Graduate, because when you say graduate, folks tend to think all the way up to high school in that 12th grade year. We're going with Portrait of a Learner, so that it's more inclusive all the way down to kindergarten through high school. And then we're also going to be focusing on deeper learning pedagogies, and I'll talk more about that here in just a bit. So for our team specifically, the first phase of it has been this Portrait of a Learner work. We partnered with UK Next Gen Leadership, and so it goes way back to September when we started this. We've had multiple meetings. The survey that I had mentioned before, we had good response on that, over 400 responses that we reviewed just when we came back from break. I think it was January 5th when we met to go over that, and great feedback that allowed us to make a lot of changes in those competencies. And so at this point, we do have an implementation plan developed with month-to-month steps. So you'll be hearing more and more about this. And when we talk Portrait of a Learner, these are just some examples. 2 of those are from our state. The one off to the right is actually from, I believe, New Jersey. I could be wrong on that, but that's kind of the visual that we're talking about. We're not that far along yet. Elaine Bailey, with her specialty, we working on that. Putting a draft together of that, and eventually we will outsource that to a professional company to really make it look nice. And we want to make sure, as far as pixel goes and everything, when we put it on logos, that it's represented well. So stay tuned for that. The next phase, which we actually just started with our Deeper Learning team last week on the 19th, excited about this, is for them to pick their path. What experiences and instructional strategies are they going to focus on to incorporate in their classroom? Because if we expect for example, if we expect our students to be critical thinkers, then what sort of experiences are they getting to critically think in the classroom? And so teacher members of our Deeper Learning team will select a focus strategy, and through our co-ops and through our state, there's a number of professional development opportunities that they can take part in. So it's an individualized plan and we referred to it that we want a green light. One of the teachers asked, well, what are our principals going to think about this? So, well, this is good work. You have the green light. We want you to go out there and try this in your classroom. And so some example pedagogies or experiences will be like project-based learning, collaborative learning, blended learning, critical thinking, and then others that may be out there. Again, this is up to them. They're currently drafting those plans and sharing them with Ms. Tracy and myself to get that green light and move ahead. Last slide on this is just overall, as far as Kentucky's Deeper Learning Initiative. This is 3 years in total. So last summer and into the fall was just learning about this whole process. Now we're in the piloting phase. Starting now, which runs all the way through next spring. I think we're on a faster track than that, and we will get some traction going more so next year and move a little bit faster. But again, this team that I speak of, they're committed for the 3-year process, so we're excited about their involvement. I think they're excited. The 19th was a very good meeting for all of us, and looking forward to completing their deeper learning path and trying these experiences in their classroom. So I'll take any questions you might have on deeper learning.
Mr. Asher, are you is this going to become part of the training? Does this become part of Big Rocks, Little Rocks? How do we
Eventually.
really make this stick? Okay.
Eventually. So one example of that would be, I keep referencing our deeper learning team teachers. Let's say we get a couple of them that are very proficient, successful with project-based learning. We then put them in front of the other teachers through our Best Practice Academy to lead a session on that, and then bring in others who are interested in trying that in their classroom, because it would mean so much more if we have a high school teacher here in an English classroom trying this, and this is how I did it. Here's what I learned from it. Here's what was successful. Here's what wasn't, and to spread that knowledge and experiences throughout the district. So that would be one example.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Asher?
The grant does have certain guidelines as to how some of it has to be spent on PD, some can be spent on personnel, and then they have a timeline as well as to how we progress through this. So yeah, there's a lot of things there that we have to follow to be able to spend their money, which is what we should do. But again, it does give us a lot of freedom to do good things for our kids.
Great.
Ultimately, to your question, though, what I left out was this portrait that we're referring to will be a major driver on much that we do. I keep using the example of critical thinking or collaboration. Those will be driving forces in all of our classrooms and all that we do. We did that first for a purpose. That's kind of our end in mind. If we want our students to have these competencies, then everything else should lead up to that.
And then when you're looking at the Portrait of a Learner today versus what that portrait would have looked like 10 years ago or 10 years from now, I would assume that it's going to be very different. would you build into this process some sort of review as the world changes, sort of to update?
Potentially. This is our first go at it, but I don't know that it would change that much. I really buy into this because more than several years ago, we did the Leader in Me at Northside, and that's based on the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which have been around a very long time, which are more like these competency-based skills. And so a lot of what we're doing right now, I connect back to then, and I was big on that initiative because that's what I wanted for my kids who were going through Northside at the time. I wanted them to collaborate. I wanted them to be kind to others, those sort of life skills. And so in many ways, I see a lot of it staying the same, but certainly would be a review process or a review cycle, much like we do our curriculum. I could see this being put on the very same cycle.
I don't know that the skills will change, but the process of how we get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, would
Yeah.
probably be what we would have to address.
Okay. Anything else on the instructional?
If not, just real quick on the equity side of things, we just had our equity team meeting. I said it multiple times in that. I finally feel like we're getting traction there and we're getting somewhere. We have had that action plan for several years now. Harder to accomplish through COVID, but definitely making our way through that. We did complete the school reviews through late November, early December. Reviewed those results with that team today, meeting with the school level teams virtually on Thursday, just to go over our findings, both what we call pluses and deltas, positive areas and growth areas, and then informing them of how they can make next steps in regard to that. So excited about that process and finally getting some traction there.
Mr. Asher, will you be able to provide those results back to the board, or like maybe a higher level one for the whole district, just sort of what those findings are?
We could. We did talk about this last in December. Little hesitant to do. I certainly could give a report, but little hesitant to do that. It's their first go at it. So the ratings might not have been where we expect them to be in the long run, but certainly could give our same summary that we just went over today. I think that would be good information for you.
Thank you.
Mr. Asher, correct me if I'm wrong. I serve on the equity committee. I think we have a board member spot open on the equity committee, right?
It's like a minimum of 1.
Okay.
We have had 2 in the past.
Okay.
But we would welcome another if their interest was there.
Okay.
And one on that note, speaking of who's on it, we do have 3 students on it, but we haven't been able to engage them yet, and that's not their fault. That's ours. So we sat here today talking about how we can do that. They're not going to be. We have a 5 o'clock meeting each month. That's not really. That doesn't fit their schedule. So we talked about coming around using Hive Time as a spot to do that. Several members beyond myself volunteered to sit in on that and just dialogue with them and engage them more in this process. And even we have 3 right now, 2 juniors and 1 senior, I believe. It was brought up in there today. Why don't we get a freshman, sophomore involved, and then we can have that consistency year to year and involve them, engage them even more. So that all came out of there. It was good stuff today.
Anything else for Mr. Asher? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to recognitions. Our first one is we have a new National Board Certified Teacher, Casey Knight.
Yes, Miss Knight wanted to be here tonight, but unfortunately she couldn't. But we're going to read this recognition because she has accomplished something very incredible. The National Board Certification is the highest professional distinction available in education. It benefits students, teachers, and school systems by advancing the quality of teaching and learning. Extensive research shows the value of board certification on student learning. The impact is even greater for minority and low-income students. Having board certified teachers in our school is important because their commitment to student learning and achievement aligns with our mission. In partnership with families and community, to provide challenging learning opportunities for all students, promote student growth and achievement, and prepare students to strive for excellence, said Elaine Kaiser, principal at Huntertown. As our population of national board certified teachers has increased, we see teachers helping guide teachers, setting higher expectations, and exhibiting leadership. I encourage all of our teachers to consider board certification, both for the enormous impact it has on students and their own careers. Woodford County is proud to announce that we have one new teacher in our district who has achieved national board certification this year. This brings our total to 33 national board teachers currently teaching in our district. Our most recent board certified teacher is Miss Casey Knight at Northside Elementary. In order to become a board certified teacher, candidates voluntarily complete a rigorous certification program that consists of 4 components: assessment of content knowledge, reflection on student work samples, video and analysis of teaching practice, and documentation of the impact of assessment and collaboration on student learning. These components were designed by teachers for teachers to identify the essential knowledge and skills required to advance student learning and achievement. This is a serious commitment of time and energy, but teachers who achieve certification describe the process as transformative. So, although Mrs. Knight couldn't be here tonight, can we please give her a round of applause?
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. So now we're going to move to our moved agenda item, which is the CSIP. Oh, we do have one more recognition. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We're not going to talk about age, right?
No, I learned my lesson last week on that. I will not talk about age. I do want to take the opportunity to thank you all for your service. I can attest to the challenge of serving in local government elected positions. It's a unique experience. I wish everybody had the opportunity to do at least briefly so they would appreciate how challenging it is for you all. I couldn't imagine, I complain about my job sometimes. I couldn't imagine sitting in your all seat. You're going to deliberate issues you never would have dreamed about, because the public opinion is so fluid anymore with social media. So I do not envy you, but on behalf of the community, I do appreciate your willingness to step forward and do this. It's much appreciated. To that end, I have a proclamation here that I would like to read and sign. Whereas our community values a quality education as a vital step along the pathway to success for our children, and whereas Adam Brickler, Amanda Glass, Sarah McCowan, Angela McHale, and Sherry Springate contribute greatly to this community through their service on the Woodford County Board of Education, and whereas these decision makers are responsible for maintaining strong, effective budgetary oversight, high standards for employment, and a safe, well-managed set of school facilities. And whereas these board members are serving our community with integrity, honor, and a commitment to our children's futures. And whereas January 2023 marks Kentucky's observation of their contributions through School Board Recognition Month. Therefore, I, as Mayor of Versailles, do hereby proclaim the month of January 2023 throughout this community as School Board Recognition Month, and urge all citizens to honor Adam Brickler, Amanda Glass, Sarah McCowan, Angela McHale, and Sherry Springate for their service. So thank you all so very much for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Colbert.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now on to CSIP, right? Oh, no? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. As we honor our board members, something that Woodford County has traditionally done is they will purchase books, the district purchase books, and donate those books to the schools. So this is our high school book that we have purchased in honor of our board and donated. This is our middle school book, and then this is our elementary school book. So that's something that we like to try to do here. And it's anytime you can give kids books, you're doing the right thing. So thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins. CSIP?
Yes.
So this is moved up from the information, right? Information items. Do we have a presentation? Did we just want? Okay.
He'll speak to it.
Yeah, this is just an information-only item. This, very similar to CDIP. CSIP is Comprehensive School Improvement Plan. There are certain phases to this. These are all outlined by KDE. They're completed within a platform called Cognia that the principals and their committees, however they do that with their site-based, with their leadership teams, that they have to complete. So they've done their homework. To this point, those have either been through their site-based and approved or are scheduled to do so this month. So again, just an informational item so that you're aware of what their major initiatives are. You'll see a lot of links, not live links, but a lot of connections to district work that we're doing, as well as some individualized based on each school. But as you read through anything either tonight or further on in the future, if you have any questions for those, you can ask those of me, and I'll steer them on through the schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Asher, I'm sorry, I just had a quick question. Would it be possible for them to list the costs on the plans? I always like to see kind of, an estimate of the costs as well as the funding source.
There is a column, I think there's a column for
There's a
that.
column.
Yes. If they're not, are they there on some of them that you reviewed or not there?
I didn't see any.
Okay.
I did see some funding sources, but just, kind of estimates of costs. And then the other thing is, I think that they did a wonderful job on that. I know that all the principals and the staff and the site-based committees look at their data, and then they kind of develop those plans, and I've sat on a couple of those committees. And I know it's hard work, and they're really doing a good job kind of digging into what they need locally. I was wondering if there's some avenue or some venue, I guess I should ask the superintendent, whereby we could speak with the principals or the site-based councils of each school, and just kind of share with them that our revenue last year was $2 million more than our expenses, and kind of figure out if there was some way to get some of that money into the schools and into the classrooms, through the board possibly setting some priorities, and then going through that process to kind of make sure that schools have what they need for maintenance, for programming, for that kind of thing. Because I think the CSIPs are more of, we look at our data, we look at our resources, and we kind of go from there. Whereas what I'm talking about is more of a needs assessment of what we would like to see, what programming we could use, how we could benefit our students and our teachers and our staff in the building. And like I said, if you look at the fact that we had more than $2 million of revenue last year than expenses, that's money that could go directly into the schools and directly into the classrooms.
Is that for me?
Yes, sir.
We're pretty open-minded about that, but designing the budget is typically done by the district administrators. And the board members really don't have a lot of input on the day-to-day designing of the budget.
Oh, yeah, and I definitely don't want to have micromanagement of day-to-day.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's clear that the board is supposed to set the budget priorities, and we have policies in place. So the board is supposed to set those priorities and have those conversations and have that information. And for us to be able to do that and to make sure that that money is getting into the hands of the principals and the schools, I think we kind of have to hear from them. We have to hear that information and know what's needed. And so again, I think we're going to talk about, budgets and priorities a little bit later. But I would ask that we hear from our schools about what possibly we could use that $2 million that we had in excess revenue last year, so that it could get into the schools and into the classrooms and make an impact. And obviously, as a board, we would need to discuss priorities and what we think would be a good use of that money. But it's very clear the board sets those priorities and the board sets that budget. So that's just something I would like to see. I don't know about other members.
I think, isn't the CSIP kind of laying that out for us?
Yes.
It pretty
would
much
say that's
does. I mean,
the
that's their data
beginning of all of
analysis.
it.
That's their needs
I
assessment.
mean, I view a CSIP as an action plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's an action plan of what money we have in our school right now. What is our budget? We have this much budget. We have these needs looking at our data. How are we going to use the money that we have currently on those needs? It doesn't discuss building. It doesn't discuss maintenance. It doesn't discuss
well-
any programming that
Yeah, that
they don't
wouldn't-
already
Yeah, that's-
have.
no,
So it's a different
that's-
kind of a needs assessment.
I
It's
think
more of a
there's,
needs
I think
assessment
there's
of.
two. There's the district facilities plan, which would be the physical, and then the CSIP. I think we do all of that.
And again-
I think that maybe we can show more in the budget presentation or something how all of that flows, but I certainly would not say that the board would override priorities that the schools have set for their children.
Well, and again, I don't think that the schools, the principals, and the CDIP at all deals with the needs of this extra $2 million that we had last year. The board would set that priority. I don't think anybody went into the schools, and I know the principals in the schools never came to a board meeting and said to us, you got an extra $2 million.
Mr. Asher
How would
is
you like
trying
to?
to answer.
I could,
Well, I'm
He's trying to
speaking, but thank you.
just their opportunity to express needs. We have had for the past 2 years an allocation of funds that may or may not been items connected to their CSIP, but ultimately were needs that they identified. So extra funds, when you talk about extra revenue that was provided to them. Last year, we called very similar process, but called it an RFP. So rather than a set allocated amount, they said, here's what we need. There was a very extensive process to budget with them to make sure the math coaches, for example, that the elementaries did on how that would be funded, whether through school funds or what was called this RFP funding. So there has been extra funding provided to help them meet their needs.
Well, I definitely appreciate hearing that, and I'm glad that the math and the reading coaches were funded. I guess what I'm saying is we had $2 million more in taxes and revenue last year than we spent. So with $2 million, I think it would be great to hear from the schools about what other needs they might have. And it could be, wish listed, it could be request for proposal. But again, the board didn't hear any of that. It wasn't anything that was shared with us. And again, it was $2 million more dollars. So when we take our taxes in, we should spend that revenue on our students and in our schools. And so if we had $2 million extra dollars last year, more revenue than taxes, I would hope that the board would want to set priorities for that money. And I would hope that the board would want to hear from the schools about how that can be used in the schools and in the classrooms. And that hasn't happened. I understand the CSIP process and the CDIP process. What I'm talking about is a little bit different than that. It's more along the lines of what you're talking about with the reading and the math interventionist. And thankfully, we had teachers that came to a board meeting and spoke up about that so that we were able to hear about that. But I think, we had one budget committee meeting over the past few years. And at that meeting, we had teachers and staff and principals come in and say, we have these needs. Our students have these needs. And so I think they would be shocked to find out that we had $2 million extra dollars last year, more in revenue than expenses, that we just basically, I guess, banked. We didn't use that, those resources. And so again, all I'm saying is I would like for us as a board to hear from the schools, from the principals, and I would like for us to set priorities and to follow our policies about budgeting. So thank you, though.
Okay.
Anything else for Mr. Asher?
I had a quick question about
Sure.
that. So the SBDM meetings that are held, is that an opportunity for us to go and listen to the needs of the individual schools?
Those are open meetings,
that
yes.
We can go, and are those monthly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Most of them, either you can contact the principal or oftentimes they're posted on their websites of those meeting dates.
Okay.
I've attended those as
Because
a
I think
board
that
member.
would, yeah, I mean, again, just learning everything and how it all works, I think that would be helpful for me to go to those meetings and listen in and see what happens at those meetings and
Yep.
the needs and.
They are standing meetings, just like, third Monday of the month that we're on for board. They vary by school, whether it be Monday or Thursday, but they're a standing meeting each month.
Okay, cool. Thank
Yep.
you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Asher. Okay. Item E is update on the high school.
We have Mr. Ratliff and Ms. Lemire available tonight, so.
Brought a laser pointer this time, but I'm not sure if it'll work on a screen. I was afraid of that. So I'll just do my best. I was told to stand near the mic to kind of identify the areas I'm speaking of. Right there you can see, the middle of the picture is the building footprint. The entire building is excavated to the subgrade elevation, which was 4 feet below finished floor. If you look kind of to the left center of the TV there, you'll see the C-wing is what we call it. And they have finally achieved fill to subgrade elevation there. So if you look really close, and if you want to start playing the video, you can. It'll get closer at one point, but you can see the orange batter boards and paint. That's the concrete footings that they're about to begin excavating. I believe I heard somebody say the weather had been good lately. Did you say that? Of course, that's been an ongoing fight. It's a lot harder when you're 4 feet deep trying to get out. We typically need about 3-day window of dry weather to make real progress. Once it rains, you've got a day or two to de-water and dry it up, and then you need a full day to fill, and that's minimum. So, 3 days without precipitation right now is few and far between. But a big milestone was achieving the subgrade elevation. Just to go a little into it, once we get to that rock, this is a load-bearing, rock-bearing foundation school, so it's expected that all the foundations are to set on 5 foot thick of bedrock. What part of the contract here is once you get to the rock, every 25 feet, they drill a 5 foot hole to ensure that it is 5 feet of rock. The problem is when you find that it isn't a solid 5 feet of rock, it's an exploration process. There's no, we'll get a fix for a 1/2 inch seam, and then the next one you find is 12 inches. Well, it's got to go to engineers. It's got to go through the whole process to get that fixed. So that's also makes things complicated when you're trying to get it to start coming out of the ground. We are hopeful we was able to get the concrete crew started in that area. If you don't care, rewind it a little bit to where it just shows the entire site. That was a big milestone. We're confident, again, as long as we can get a 3-day window here and there, that the fill will stay in front of the concrete crews. Barring, it doesn't just keep doing what it's been doing. So you can see on the far side, the track and field area, the future athletic development. After the previous board meeting where the change order was approved for the expedited fill or undercut and fill of the future athletic area. It's an expedited process because of how quickly the track and field will be built on this project. They've already removed all the clay from that area, and as you'll see, they've started coming back up with shot rock. They've made it to the 894 elevation, which is as high as they could go with shot rock, so now it'll be clay fill, and that's hinged upon dry weather. You can't see it there, but towards Tyrone Pike, they have, if you go forward maybe a little more, right there, you can't, I wish this laser pointer would work, but along the Tyrone Pike, that road to the right-hand side, you can see a ditch running all the way through there. That is utilities that connect to the Tyrone Pike entrance. It's gas, water, and fire suppression. They've started digging that trench and installing those lines, which will run into that C-wing area that they've currently filled. So cross your fingers for good weather, and it'll keep moving. Any questions for me?
I'm guessing the blasting is complete.
Yes, January 13th was the cutoff date for that. Went longer than we wanted it to. We could have cut it off at any point we wanted, but when you cut it off, that means they have to hole ram moving forward, and you could shoot yourself in the foot kind of if you cut them off from blasting, and then they had to hole ram that much more rock. It would take longer. So that was a date we defined, and they held to it. So
Thank you.
yep.
Does anyone else have questions? I just had one thing.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was wondering if you and Ms. Lemire were going to be here for the remainder of the meeting. I think we have some parents that are here to speak tonight and had some questions about like locker room, bathroom, that sort of thing, so I just wanted to double check.
I always am.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Thank you.
The weather's been good for what I do, not for what you do.
yeah.
We've been able to get kids to school. You haven't been able to work.
I thought I was hearing things.
Thank you, Mr. Ratliff. Next item is our treasurer's report. Mr. Smith?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome, new board members. Glad to be able to present the financial information to you for the month of December 2022. The way I typically do this is go through the balance sheet documents and give you the fund balances. I'll go through ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, the remaining budgets, and then answer any questions you have for that. So on the balance sheet, the general fund balance is $17,869,850. The Fund 2 Special Revenue Fund balance is $593,361. The Fund 21 is $469,542. Fund 25, which is a school activity fund, is $493,882. The 310 capital outlay is $148,799. The 320 is $149,774. The construction fund budget is $2,322,000. Now, I'm going to point out there's an error on this report. It does not reflect the $72 million worth of interest investment that is in interest. So I'll be glad to reproduce this report tomorrow and send it back out to you. But I didn't review this thoroughly before the meeting, and I just caught it a few minutes ago. So I'll be glad to give an updated. But that fund balance should be about $72 million higher than that. So just wanted to point that out. The Fund 400 fund balance is $4,257,000. $4,257,193. The Fund 51 Food Service Fund is $767,398. And then the daycare operations is $613,851. And then finally, the Community Education Fund has a fund balance of $30,763. If you refer to the report that's labeled ESSER 2, we're nearing the end of ESSER 2. I believe September 30th of this year we'll be wrapping that grant up. There's $45,252 available there. And then the ESSER 3 budget, there's $715,284 remaining in that grant. So what questions do you have?
I was just going to ask, the one that's expiring in September, are we on schedule to deplete that by then? Is it kind of set out and scheduled out that it'll be down to zero by the time it's over? Or?
It is, and we monitor those pretty rigorously, so we'll make sure that that is spent out appropriately.
Okay. Thank you.
I did have a few comments or questions. I don't know if anybody else has some, would like to go first.
Go ahead.
Before sharing my comments about the treasurer's report, I would just like for us to look at a board policy. It's policy 04.31. I don't know if anybody wants to look that up, or I can just read. Specifically, the section titled Expenditure of Funds. This section states, expenditures from any district fund shall be made in accordance with the budgets approved by the board. So from there, I'm going to turn to page 9 on our monthly report for period 6. It's the one of the Munez reports, not the one that we just went over, but the other one that's attached. If you look on page 9, under the category fund transfers, I see that the board approved $445,000 in this category. But if you look right beside it, you can see that $2.2 million was transferred out of the general fund budget. Can you just explain the discrepancy?
Yeah,
Because according to policy, the board would have approved expenditures exceeding this budgeted amount.
Yeah, absolutely. So those fund transfers are for the payoff, the debt obligation that was paid off early to be able to do the bond issue for the high school. So that's the difference. I think that's 100% of the difference between the 445,000 and the 2,248,000.
Okay, so we approved that bond defeasance back in July, but then we approved this budget appropriation in September. So why wasn't the defeasance included in this category?
Or I'm not sure I'm following exactly what you're asking, but I'm thinking the budget did not align with the actual expenditure. Is that the question?
Well, if we approved this budget defeasance of a couple $1 million back in July,
Yep.
but then we approved this budget saying that we were gonna just expend $445,000, that was our appropriation. Why wouldn't that reflect that extra $2.2 million? Why wouldn't that be reflected in the budget we approved? Because when we approve a budget, that has to be followed, just like the policy says.
Well, I do understand the point, but I would reiterate, and I've made this point before at these board meetings, these budgets as set are never exact, never, and never have been exact. They're always require budget amendments. They always require variations from budgeted amounts to actual expenditures. Budgets are only estimates of what is going to be spent. If you looked at basically every function within the school district, from instruction down through facilities and everything else, the actual expenditures never. So based on what you're saying, those would always be exact, and that is never the case. So that I just can't, there's no way that we can be expected to follow a budget exactly. Now, I do get your point that there's $2 million. And so I think that goes back to what you were mentioning earlier. There's extra $2 million does not exist as far as I'm aware of. So, we've had to take money to pay for the defeasance of the debt to be able to build a high school. And so there's clearly $2.2 million that did not make it into the budget exactly when it was started. So.
Well, and I appreciate your comments. I probably should direct my comments to the superintendent. So when we have a budget and we expect and we approve and we vote for $445,000 to be utilized for interfund transfers, but then that budget is exceeded by over $2 million, that would either require a budget amendment or some sort of discussion, or it could just have been appropriated. That's not a rounding error. It's not hundreds of dollars. It's not thousands of dollars. It's a couple of million. And when you look at our policy, it's clear that expenditures from any district fund have to be made in accordance with the budget approved by the board. And so I have an issue with that. The other issue I have is, where did this money come from in this report? Where did this $2.2 million come from?
Came from the general fund revenues.
Okay, so what page does it show that it came out of? Because the general fund beginning balance of 9.4 million, around 9.4, has to be listed and included in this budget. So 5.5 is listed in contingency, and that leaves about $4 million that should be in one of the funds: instruction, student support, school administration support, one of these categories, one of our fund balances, correct?
The budgets must balance, the revenues and the expenses must balance. I'd have to look. It's been a few days since I've looked at any of that, but I don't think that it came from any. If I remember correctly, the contingency last year was about $7 million, and I think we reduced the contingency in this year's budget to $5 million, and that's where some of that came from.
The contingency shown is unchanged. It is 5.5. So it definitely didn't come out of that, because it's not reflected on page 9 as coming out of that. I guess since it has to be either in the contingency or in one of the fund balances, instruction, student support services, those categories, it had to come either from the contingency, and it looks like, according to this document, that was 5.4 and didn't change.
I think, Ms. Springate, it might be helpful, and I know we've had this discussion before, asking questions in the meeting is perfectly fine, that's what we're supposed to do, but giving Mr. Smith a chance to prepare for those answers ahead of time might be helpful. So did you ask him any of this information ahead of time, or is this the first time we're asking him in this public meeting?
Well, and again, I want to be clear
Well,
that
no,
the
I just
budget
asked,
is.
I just
if
asked
I
a
could
question.
speak, if I could
Did
speak,
you ask him ahead of time?
if I could speak, please.
If you're
Thank
answering
you.
my question.
What I would like to say is that we received this document late Friday. I don't think Mr. Smith works on Saturday or Sunday, and I had to work today. So I didn't email him, but this is not a nuanced question. Asking if the beginning balance of $9.4 million is reflected in the budget is a basic question.
And when did
asking where
these
this fund
transactions
transfer-
happen that you're asking about? Did they happen in the month of January?
No, this is the
No.
December report.
No,
So,
in the month of December, pardon
and
me.
this was posted to the agenda late Friday afternoon. So just to be clear, part of open meetings and part of statute and policy require us to have budget discussions in an open meeting.
Absolutely.
They require us, let me read for you, on or before January 31st, the board
I
shall
don't need you to
formally
read
and
for me.
publicly examine
I
a
think
detailed estimate
again,
of
Ms.
revenues and proposed
Springate, Ms.
expenditures,
Springate,
line by line in the following fiscal year.
nobody is saying that you should not ask your questions.
Thank you.
A simple email over the weekend that Mr. Smith could have opened up this morning, perhaps, would have given him chance to prepare to answer your question in a public meeting where you are putting him and Mr. Adkins on the spot once again. Once again. So I'm asking you, begging you, please just ask a question ahead of time. You can still read it out to the public. You can still pontificate on every item that you want to, but just ask the question ahead of time. It's not fair. It's not fair, Ms. Springate. That is all that I'm asking.
I can hear what you're saying, and I
Okay,
appreciate that,
thank
Ms.
you.
McHale. However, the board has a duty to provide financial oversight. I'm not asking nuanced questions. I'm simply saying,
are simply
where did that
asking-
money
you are
come from?
absolutely
It can come
asking
from
nuanced
two
questions.
places. The
Nobody,
can come from the contingency
again,
or from the
nobody
funds.
is saying not to ask the questions. Nobody, and nobody has ever said that to you,
And I'm
Ms.
perfectly
Springate.
happy with Mr. Atkins getting back with that answer.
Okay.
I guess my point
So
is,
every month, we do every single month. Can we start over? Can we not start over and try this the right way? Just with having discussion, having professional relationships, having open questions ahead of time so that we don't get stuck in this go around every single month. Please, I am asking you to please reflect on this over the next month so that we can come to a meeting next month and not waste all of this time, put people on the spot, embarrass and try to surprise everybody with the notion that you're the only one that's looking at this stuff. It's not fair. And I'm asking that we make a commitment going forward, every person on this board, to just be professional.
Can I ask a
Is that
question?
too much to ask?
Can I ask
no.
a-
And
okay.
again, I think it is professional to ask questions in a meeting. Your
I am not
lecture of the
saying
past
that it
10
is
minutes
not.
has certainly taken up a
I
lot of
have not
time.
lectured anything.
I'm sorry,
You
I'm
have
speaking.
lectured.
I'm speaking. If
Mrs.
I could finish
Springate.
speaking, please. I appreciate what you're saying. However, questions about the budget and all the other questions asked tonight were not emailed to the staff members. When you asked Mr. Asher questions, you didn't email that to him.
That's different.
No, it isn't.
It
Asking
certainly is
questions at an
different.
open meeting
No.
for a public who pays for the meeting with their tax dollars about their tax dollars is certainly acceptable.
Mrs.
I
Springate,
think that
nobody said
when you
not to.
categorize it the way you're categorizing it is unfair.
No, it's
We can't
not.
ask questions about the budget, but we can ask questions about any other item on the
That's-
agenda
no,
of the
that is
staff.
not true. I
What
think
I'm
you should
saying
ask
is, I'm
questions
sorry,
about
could I please
anything.
finish speaking?
Mrs. Springate, this is enough. It's enough.
Could I please finish speaking?
This is our first meeting.
Could I please finish speaking?
It's our first meeting. I am asking you to make a change going forward. We are right back to where we were in December. That is not where any of us want to be. So I am simply asking you, ask these types of questions where somebody would have to prepare an answer. Looking at these numbers, going through the financials versus looking at a 5-page PowerPoint that is more general. It is different. And I'm sorry if you don't see it that way, but it is. It's
Well,
different. And if I had a question, if I had it ahead of time, I would have asked it ahead of time. And I do ask
And I
questions
appreciate
ahead
that.
of time.
I do appreciate
and
that.
And please, ask all the questions that you want at
Okay,
the
thank
meeting,
you.
but let people prepare.
Thank you. And again, I think that that's not a nuanced question. That should be something that's easily answered. There are two places the money could have come from. the contingency or one of these fund balances? That's really a simple question. Again, it's not nuanced. But again, I will reflect upon what you're saying. I just want to get through the questions and have some answers and some clarity. When I ask questions, it's because people in the community are asking the questions of me, and also because I think that we have to have these discussions in open meeting.
For sure.
But to spend, just countless minutes talking over me just because I'm asking questions about finance, to me is unfair.
Yeah.
You ask questions of Mr. Asher about the equity and the instructional, and we ask questions at anyone else who comes up to speak. But for some reason, it seems taboo to ask simple budget questions about documents that were presented in the meeting. And again, they were attached a little bit late, so it really didn't leave any time to email during regular hours when I wasn't at work and Mr. Smith wasn't working on the weekend. I just have a couple more questions and then we'll be finished with the budget forever tonight. I definitely would appreciate, Mr. Atkins, if you could get back with the board, the whole board, and possibly the public somehow with an answer about where that $2.2 million, what funds it came out of. And the other thing is that I just want to say that if we began the year with $9.4 million, again, not a nuanced question, that's the beginning balance, it's at the top of the page, and we have 5.5 or so in contingency, I wonder where the rest of that money is and where it's reflected on this report. Just basic questions that I think everybody would like to be able to understand and to look at and see. And the reason that's important, again, is like I said earlier, it's because if we have, extra millions of dollars and we are not as a board discussing that or even aware of that, that's concerning. But also it's concerning that if you budget $500,000 but you spend $2.2 million, that's concerning. It's also concerning because if that money came out of student support or instruction, then we've budgeted for those categories, signaling to the board and to the public that we're going to be utilizing that money for instruction or for students, yet we're not. So I just think it's really important that the budget reflect how we're actually going to be doing expenditures, and also that the budget follow the policy. And that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
But there was a question in there somewhere.
Well, I do want to respond because maybe we need to have a budgeting session about how budgets are created and how they're followed, because I don't agree with some of the premises of what you're saying, with all due respect. There aren't only two places that $2 million that you keep referring to can come from. I do not follow the philosophy that every budget should be followed to the penny, nor will that ever happen in actuality. And so therefore, there's one of a numerous number of line items that some of those dollars could have been extracted from to be able to utilize to pay that debt service down. So I fundamentally disagree with your premise there. And also fundamentally disagree with your premise that the budget, based on what you're saying, is going to always be exact to actual spending. That is impossible. It's not happened ever in history, nor will it ever happen in history. And as I've mentioned earlier, the fact, if the expectation is that once the board approves a budget, that's going to be followed without any alterations or differences, is just unrealistic. And that's really all I have to say about that. And I would be glad, and I've offered already to have a private invitation with any of you guys to go through the budgets and how these things work in actuality. And I've yet to be taken up on it by some folks, but it is just not realistic what you're saying, and I'm sorry.
Well, I do agree with you, and I appreciate what you're saying. All I'm saying is if the budget is off by $500,000, $2 million, there should be a budget amendment.
What is the amount?
Shouldn't be exact.
What is the amount? What is the amount that's okay?
Maybe that's a discussion we need to have.
Maybe it is,
Maybe a work
because I don't
session to have that
understand,
discussion.
I don't understand how to do my job based on what I hear you
Well,
saying.
and again, Mr. Atkins, I
Mrs.
don't think
Springate.
that it should be exact, the budget has to be exact. I'm simply saying that if you're not gonna follow the budget we passed, just bring an amendment to us. And again, I'm not saying if it's $100 or $1,000, but when it's a couple million, that's something we need to discuss. And maybe that would be healthy or helpful as a board to sit down and have those conversations, some sort of a work session to be able to do that, so that we all kind of have the same expectations.
I think there are two things here. Number one, I think if you really wanted us to be able to get these questions answered out to the public, You would not continue to ask them for the first time at an open meeting where we have to come back with answers later on. So again, asking you to please prepare the questions ahead of time, even if it's Monday morning when Mr. Smith comes in the day of a meeting, I think that's fine. Number two, one of the things that I would like to do is KSBA has a service that they will provide where they will come out and they will do training on all sorts of topics. And it can be a private training session for us, of course, open meeting, private, that it's just us going through that training. I think that it would be very, very beneficial for us to hear the same thing from one person all at the same time, so we can be very clear going forward, the assertions that you're making, the questions that we're asking, and the information that we're giving to the public, and make sure that everything is correct, true, and we all understand it from the same page. So I will take that task to find out how much money that will cost. I don't think it will be outrageous, and I will mention they have all sorts of topics, so I think it would be interesting if we could even do maybe one a quarter on different things that are coming up, because we all do hear different things at different times, and it makes it very difficult to have a discussion when people hear different things at different times. Fair?
I will say that Ms. McCown and Mr. Brickler are new board members, and they've had questions from their constituents, and they have reached out to us to answer those, and we've answered them.
Can I ask a question? Because I agree with Ms. Springate, having the documents Friday afternoon to prepare for a Monday meeting, that was it was hard for me to get through all of the information as well. So is there a way that we can get, especially the financial information, because to me that's so comprehensive, is there a way to get those attachments like the Monday, a week before the board meeting, so that way we can, like, I could schedule a time to meet with Mr. Smith and have my questions asked, give him those questions and have time to talk with him and understand that. But like Ms. Springate said, having it on a Friday that would not allow that kind of time. So is that something that we can?
Yeah, sure.
So on Mondays from now on?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'll say one more thing. When the public watches these meetings and they see our employees belittled, demeaned, talked down to, and accused, it's hard for us to recruit employees to Woodford County with that type of thing going on. And I do apologize, Mr. Smith.
Any other questions for Mr. Smith?
I'll just say on a different note, I know in preparation for being on the board, both Ms. McCown and I tried to reach out to different administrators, and Mr. Smith was one, and I think we originally scheduled like an hour of your time, and we ended up taking like 3 hours of your time. So trying to learn and absorb as much. School funding, and we've gone to trainings at conferences. We're going to another one next month. School finance is crazy. And for those of you out there, if you look at all this, and of course I'm still learning, there's a lot to it. So we're going to have questions, we're going to have discussions. I think we should set up separate times to talk with you and public times to talk with you. I think it should be both. So as long as we do that, I think we'll get a lot further. Overall, if we have enough time, like they mentioned, having maybe the finances a little bit early if possible, whatever's reasonable, and then being able to schedule time to talk before meetings, during meetings, I think we'll go a long way. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So then we will vote to approve the December financial report. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Mr. Brickler. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Okay,
Sorry.
so that was 4-1?
Nay.
Nay, 3-2? Okay. The motion passes 3-2. All right, now we have our opportunity for audience or public comment. first is fine. Ms. Bailey has one comment to read.
Tom,
Yeah, that'd be great.
3 minutes.
Okay, I believe it was just one submitted prior. This is from Mr. Ken Ward. He says, "Good morning. I would like to know if critical race theory, gender race theory, is being taught in any of our classrooms or clubs. If so, what age groups and teachers are involved? And if there is any literature on these matters available in libraries, handouts, or learning materials in any of our schools. Please share this email at the next board meeting in January. Thank you in advance for responding to these questions. Sincerely, Ken Ward."
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Okay, so we've got 2, 4, 6, 7, maybe 8 or so people. We'll call you up one by one. There are 3 minutes for public comment. Ms. Glass will time that. And first we have Hope Brown.
My name is Hope Brown. I'm a social studies teacher at Woodford County High School. I've been in the classroom for 21 years, and I've taught at 4 different school districts. This is the second time I've ever addressed a Board of Education. Both of those instances have been before this district's board. Much like the last time I spoke, I don't want to do so. No teacher likes to bring attention to themselves to criticize the people who have power over their career. So my mere presence in front of you should be telling of how gravely serious I find the state of leadership in our school system. December's regular board meeting and special board meeting, and frankly tonight's, have been an embarrassment. I watched open hostility between board members with barely concealed disdain for one another. When one board member expressed that she did not have all the information with which to make an educated vote, that her constituents did not have time to process the information to weigh in on the issue, I witnessed our superintendent retort that constituents, whose tax dollars pay his salary, do not have a say on the board. He then asked that member to resign her position. He also attacked the same board member for being at the meeting virtually, despite the fact that several other members were there virtually as well. And conversely, in other meetings, but even before Mr. Atkins had had time to prove himself, I heard thinly veiled accusations of financial malfeasance directed toward him in regard to the construction of the new high school. The failure on the part of our leadership has advanced to the point that the board attorney, Mr. Chenoweth, resigned his position, and he made no secret of the fact that the fighting factions on the school board was the reason. We are a school district crying out for leadership that is respectful, conscientious, and dutiful. Instead, we've had pettiness, struggles for power, and rancor. At the high school alone, we lost 26 teachers between last school year and this one. Schools that had proper leadership do not have this kind of turnover. It truly makes me terrified for the state of the future of our school system as money tightens due to decreased state tax revenues, as we face state and nationwide teacher shortages, as the fight rages on over school privatization, and as we are faced with our students' increased mental health issues. In terms of the high school, we have an opening for a principal again. I have been at the high school for 6 years, and we have had 5 different principals. Who would apply for this job? Applicants are going to watch the school board meetings. They want to know what the culture and climate is like what they're getting into. Who would apply for this position? When I first came to Woodford, we were a district that truly exemplified the gold standard. We were a district that others looked up to. While this may now be true in the realm of sports, our school culture and climate have taken a backseat to other districts. To our 2 new board members, what you've taken on to serve the students and families of Woodford County requires dedication. Thank you for being willing to offer that for our community. I just hope your definition of proper leadership is different from what we have seen from our current superintendent and outgoing and current board members. I also hope that you can be a role model of proper leadership as we endeavor to dutifully serve the students of this county. They deserve more than what our leadership has given them. Thank you.
Next, we have Steve Long.
two people signed up in the same block, so does that mean I only get 3 minutes, or can I have 5?
So Carrie Long, you're taking her time as well?
That's correct.
Your policy isn't very strict on what constitutes a group, but if one person is designated to speak on behalf of a group, the tradition has been to give them 5 minutes, but you don't have a policy of allowing multiple speakers to yield their time to one speaker to collectively add their time. So if the Longs want to be treated as a group, then the spokesperson for that group could have 5 minutes.
Is that what you want?
Yeah, well, I can take as much time as you'll give me.
You'll have 5 minutes.
It's ironic that he mentioned you don't have a policy on that, because that's what I'm going to talk about. When do I start my time?
Just let me know whenever you're ready. I'll start it.
All right, I'm here concerning the issue of males in the female restrooms and locker rooms. This is an issue we have wanted to discuss at a school board meeting for several months now, but have been unsuccessful in our attempts to get this on the agenda. I'm going to speak about the current school district policy, or more accurately, the lack of any policy regarding this issue. The school district currently allows males to enter and remain in girls' bathrooms and locker rooms. I've been told by school administrators that only transgender students are allowed into the opposite gender's facilities. This prompted me to send several emails with questions about this practice. I received a response from Assistant Superintendent Garrett Wells, which he said was responses from the board attorney. Due to the school district's time restraints that are imposed on parents who want to express their concerns, I'm only going to share a few of those. First question I asked, what is the school's definition of a transgender person in their policy? And the answer is, and I'm quoting, the school does not have its own definition of transgender. So the school doesn't define that in the policy anywhere. But I've been told that only transgender people can use the opposite sex bathrooms. The second question I asked, what policy do you have in place to determine whether or not a person meets your definition of a transgender person? And I'm going to quote verbatim this answer. The board has not developed a policy on this, but the practice has been when a student makes a request for accommodations based on being transgender, a meeting is held with the student, family, and with the appropriate school personnel to determine the scope of accommodations the student is requesting. As part of this process, there is generally an informal determination made that the student who is seeking accommodations consistently, persistently, and insistently expresses a gender which is opposite to their biological sex. This informal determination allows for a distinction between a legitimate request for accommodation versus a student with ill intent falsely claiming to be transgender for an improper or nefarious purpose. That's the end of the quote from the answer that I got in writing, and I have that. This statement is untrue. There is no such panel making these determinations, and no such meeting has ever taken place. The assistant superintendent admitted this at the SBDM meeting last month. He also stated that parents would not be notified by the school if their child was transitioning to another gender. So if this answer was true, which it isn't, and there was such a board, it would actually be a good start. The parents and the board should work together to develop something like this, provided qualified personnel were on the panel and parents were involved. The fact that the assistant superintendent felt compelled to lie about this fabricated process tells me that he knows such process should be in place. A district-wide policy needs to be implemented that includes a definition of what a transgender student is and a means to determine whether or not a person meets that criteria. Parents and the school board should collaborate on this. The absence of such a policy leaves the school district open to civil liability if, God forbid, something happens to one of our students. There have been over 5 sexual assaults on female students by male students claiming to be transgender in school bathrooms. 2 of those occurred in a neighboring state to Kentucky. The school district has been stonewalling parents, and as I just read, lying to parents about this issue. This erodes the parents' trust in the school system and the school board. It drives a wedge between the parents and the school. I believe the reason that they have refused to publicly discuss this issue and make an official policy is they do not want the public to know what they are allowing to occur in their schools. According to KRS 510-148, indecent exposure in the first degree, that is a crime in the state of Kentucky.
The actual verbatim KRS is a person is guilty of indecent exposure in the first degree when he intentionally exposes his genitals under circumstances in which he knows or should know that his conduct is likely to cause affront or alarm to a person under the age of 18. Second degree is if they are over the age of 18. So if at Falling Springs, for example, an 18-year-old senior male undresses in front of a 14-year-old female in their locker room, that's a crime in the state of Kentucky. It's a crime anywhere in the state of Kentucky. But our school district believes that in the school, it's okay. We have 18 and 19-year-old seniors and 14-year-old freshmen in our high school. If it's okay for a 19-year-old male senior to undress in front of a 14-year-old freshman girl at the high school, is it okay for a 23-year-old male teacher to use the girls' locker room at the middle school with 11-year-old girls? Is it okay for a 50-year-old male bus driver or a 60-year-old male visitor to use the girls' restroom at one of our elementary schools? It's applying the same logic. An official written district policy allows the community to know what they and their students can expect when they attend school. We need to work together to develop a policy to protect our children.
Mr. Long, that's 5 minutes. Finish your thought, please. You
I'm
can finish
done.
your sentence.
No, but we listened for 20 minutes while you all bickered, and then we get 5 minutes. That's the end of my talk.
Next, we have Pete Mara.
I'll be using the balance of my wife's time as well. Should I,
Okay, so
Pete
you
and
have
Heather?
5 minutes.
I want to thank all of you for your service to the school, Superintendent Atkins, school board members, and staff. No one gets into education to get rich, and no one runs for school board to become famous. So thank you for what you do. However, you get into this work because you're passionate about students. You care about the community that you serve. But there's another group of people that are equally passionate about students, and that's parents. We parents, me being one of them, I have 3 children in the school system right now, and I care deeply about them, and I care deeply about the other students that are in the Woodford County system. The problems that we have before us have no easy answers. There's no easy solutions. They're complex. The simple fact that we are having a discussion about biological males using bathrooms with biological females is a testament to how much chaos surrounds this issue of what was settled science. Me being here tonight is a representation of many parents who want what is best for their children, regardless of what political and social narratives shape the landscape. As we seek to address the issues of bathrooms in the new high school, I believe that we have to be careful not to miss the fruit of the issues for the root of the problem. One of the reasons we have to deal with the root of the problem is that because it's fundamental to how our schools understand and interpret both reality and truth. Our problem is not only an issue with the biological realities and student safety, but it's a deeper rooted problem that deals with how our school will teach truth. Ours is an issue of epistemology, that is what we believe about knowledge, pedagogy, how we'll teach that knowledge, and policy, how we will process and understand what we do as a school. The 3 of these things must work and act together if we're going to be successful as a community and as an institution. Social theories and newly self-described identities are always working to undermine the realities and disrupt parental authority. Our job as adults and educators are not only just to protect students from physical harm and sexual abuse, but to also protect them from the harm of ideologies and agendas that seek to sow confusion and division among our children and parents. I want to encourage the school board to see the broader issue at play, the deeper issues that are happening right now in our classrooms, in our hallways, and in our school. Many of these have been brought to me by my own children and their friends. A place where students don't feel safe to speak up. They don't feel protected. In fact, they feel pressured to believe what doesn't align with their values. Where they must sift through ideological propaganda so that they do not feel that they are forced to comply. This does not create a place, a workplace, a learning environment, or a place that protects free speech or parental rights. Instead, it creates a place of fear. Schools throughout the country have adopted policies that protect private space for young women. They've ensured that social theories and practices do not replace truth. Places like Wisconsin, Florida, Virginia, and Arizona, all their school boards have put in policies that protect students. It takes courage to do what is right. It will not be popular. It will not be easy. But the well-being of students are at stake, not just in our bathrooms, but in our classrooms. I would encourage us to remember that ideas have consequences. Bad ideas have victims. Thank you.
Next, we have Brittany Goins.
Hello. Good evening, and thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for your willingness to address our concerns over the bathroom layout and its accessibility in the new high school. I believe more than anything, we all want a space where all our students can feel safe and have privacy at a time when they are most vulnerable. I am here tonight to speak on behalf of survivors of sexual abuse and/or assault, and to advocate that their emotional state and their mental health is also taken into consideration when building the new high school, its bathrooms, but also to implore you to act now and establish a policy for the current situation at our current high school. According to RAINN, the National Sexual Assault Resource Center, 1 out of 6 American women have been a victim of attempted rape. Ages 12 to 34 are the highest risk for rape and sexual assault, and females 16 to 19, high school age, are 4 times more likely than the general population to be victims of sexual assault or rape. Rape victims are 13 times more likely to attempt suicide than victims of nonviolent crimes. 38% of those victims, or victims of sexual violence, experience problems in school, and that number jumps to 79% when the victim knows the perpetrator. 94% of females who are raped have PTSD. My question is, why are these girls and their mental and emotional state not considered? I understand that we want to take into consideration the mental and emotional state of transgender students, and I agree that we need to be careful, thoughtful, and sympathetic to them, as they are also vulnerable. I am not denying that they need and deserve love, support, and safety, but we also must restore the balance between protecting and safeguarding transgender students and their rights, while also protecting and safeguarding the rights of biological females, especially those who have survived sexual assault or abuse. For girls who have been abused, assaulted, or raped, the fear does not come from a person's gender identity, but it comes from a person's physical presence, their anatomy. Just recognizing that a biological male is in the bathroom with them can cause alarm and panic. When I asked a good friend who is a survivor of violent sexual assault about her feelings regarding this issue, and that transgender females are able to access female bathrooms, she said, and I quote, "I think about it every single time I use a public restroom. I always get the most paranoid. It's a very vulnerable place to be. I just assume dehydrate myself and hold it all day, knowing that there could be a biological male in the girls' bathroom." There are more.
That's 5 minutes. Please finish your thought.
Okay. There are more girls walking in the halls of Woodford County who have been or are currently being sexually abused than there are transgender students. I'm not asking, this is not about taking away the rights of transgender students, but it is about protecting all of our youth, regardless of their sex, regardless of their gender, and regardless of their sexual orientation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Julie Reed. Are you taking 5 minutes, Ms. Reed?
Yes, if I have to.
You don't have to, no. You can take 3 if your husband wants to speak.
if that's what it takes, yes. I would like the allotted 5 minutes. If that, yes. Yeah. Well, semantics run abound. They run amok at this place.
Just want to make
It's
sure
crazy.
everybody gets a chance to speak if they want.
He's good. Good evening. I want to welcome the newest board members and to thank you all for being here. I really do appreciate what you do for our county. I also want to say, I hope that the new board members will take a page out of Miss Springgate's book when she, with her transparency and her responsiveness to the parents in the community. She's not even my elected board member, but she has never once failed to respond to an email, and I can't say that for everybody else on the board. I am very happy that the issue of the locker room and bathroom space in the new high school is being addressed because it gives us a chance to talk. We've been trying for several months to speak about this, and this is the first opportunity we've had. I have a freshman daughter who simply wants to feel safe in these spaces, and it's mine and her dad's job to do everything we can to ensure her safety. A key step in ensuring that our children's rights to private spaces are protected is to ensure that the school takes these steps to include parents as part of the solution and not exclude them from the conversation. That is why I would also like to address the transparency and communication between teachers, schools, and the parents. We need district policies to make our schools neutral places of learning, not places to encourage gender ideology. The motto of one of the teacher-sponsored clubs at Woodford County Middle School is the following: in this club, we will focus on activities that support your emotional and mental health, as well as inform and support our friends in the LGBTQ+ community. This club will be informative and supportive. You do not need to be a member of the LGBTQ community to join. You just need to support them. You will also never be forced to discuss your sexuality or personal information in this club. This is middle school. What happens in GSA stays in GSA, like Vegas. Open to all grades. I have huge concerns that students need to think about, that students need to think that what they say in that club stays in that club, and that this is being encouraged by an adult. I was taught by my parents that if an adult tells me to, hey, don't tell your parents about that, that's not a good thing. And that's what I teach my child too. This type of secret, divisive separation not only confuses children, it creates spaces for child groomers to sow seeds of confusion and division within the children, and it opens them up to really irreparable harm. Caregivers love and know their kids better than anyone else, and they only want their children to be safe and happy. Club statements like the one above make me think that as a parent that this teacher would encourage a kid to hide information from me. Teachers should encourage and not discourage students to talk to their parents about what's going on in their lives. I believe that when teachers and parents have open relationships, everyone is going to benefit from that, especially the students. One narrative is that parents or caregivers may become abusive if they know that their child is confused about their gender. Therefore, a teacher may think that they are keeping a student safe by helping them be one person at school and another person at home. But according to Steve Levine, an expert in gender dysphoria and a Distinguished Life Fellow of the American Psychiatric Association, encouraging a child to live radically different identities at home and at school, and to conceal what he or she perceives to be his true identity from the parents is psychologically unhealthy itself and could readily lead to additional psychological problems. When information is hidden, it deprives parents of their ability to exercise their right to direct their children's education. This is a fundamental right that does not end at the doors of the school. And it places too much burden on teachers and administrators. And it interferes with what should be their main focus, which is to teach. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to your consideration of policies that encourage transparency.
Thank you. Now we have Mr. Backy. Did I say it right?
You're close.
Close, Backy?
Yeah, Baki. My name is M.J. Baki. I'm a concerned citizen with no children in the district. I would like to welcome the 2 new board members. And I don't know if you've thought of this, but you're 40% of the board. You're new. I expect some changes. You have enough strength between the 2 of you to make some good changes in the board. To the board chair, I recommend that everybody gets a copy of Robert's Rules of Order. Now, my wife and I, Ann, have been trying to help a couple that just moved to Woodford County, and they have an extended family of 6 children, I think. There's 3 younger children that came out of a adoption from a drug situation. They adopted all 3 of the small children. When they went to move here, we took them to the school district and to the different schools, and those kids are going to Southside School. The youngest girl is 5 years old. Never spoke a word. She makes sounds. Happy little kid. And after 1 week at Southside School, Rebecca Goslin, Emily Kubler, and a Mrs. Dana, who I think is the classroom aide, sent this little girl home to her parents knowing the alphabet, being able to write her name. That's the dedication that we have in our school system. That's why people should move to Woodford County. We've got to keep that up. And I thank God that we have teachers that can see situations, recognize them, and help these kids become better citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Mr. Brickler. Any discussion?
If I could, I think one of the contracts you have is the quarterback club contract. And there was some discussion about some provisions in there, and one of them that I need to highlight for the board is, say, it's kind of a lease agreement, it's kind of a donation gift agreement, but one of the provisions in there, I think, has not been, I don't recall it being discussed at a board meeting, but we're authorizing that to be erected at the old high school. And the contract would call for the board to bear the cost of moving it to the new school. And as I understand it, that would be a substantial expense. So while we're getting the facility or the structure for very little investment by the board, moving it to the new building is essentially a commitment that you all would be taking on by approving the donation. There's other aspects to it being included within your insurance, just like any other donation. Once you've accepted it as your property, it's included. There's lots of built-in costs there, but that's the one piece I feel like you all need to have highlighted for you, because that Mr. Adkins or Mr. Smith may have a notion of the cost of that or an estimate of that, but you need to be aware of that piece before accepting that gift.
Mr. Chenoweth, from what we saw, and I think it's item 27B of that contract, it says if the district wants it moved, they would have to pay for the moving cost. But I think it also says if the quarterback club wants it moved, they would have to pay. So I guess it would be left up to the board as to whether or not they wanted to move the facility or leave it when they move to the new high school, or allow the quarterback club to move. I mean, and I may be wrong. I would.
Yeah, I feel like that might warrant some more discussion with the quarterback club before all that is approved, because it is for multiple years. They are entering into a finance agreement that relates to this. If the board decides we don't want it anymore, we don't want it at the new property, the quarterback club would have to deal with how they would go about disposing of it by selling it to recoup what investment they have. So while I fully support receiving a gift of that size and obviously the dedication from your community, I don't know if that might need a little bit more discussion before that contract is fully approved as written.
Okay.
So when we say significant, do we have any idea what significant means?
I really don't.
Okay.
So I contacted Michael Hughes with Ross Torrent, as he's been involved with the construction of this project currently on the BG1. Now, the quarterback club is covering most of the cost of this, but it's $135,000 to erect the structure. And so he suggested it would probably be double that if we had to take it down and then erect it at another location. So somewhere in excess of 260 or 270,000.
Mr. Bug with the quarterback club has acknowledged that we discussed that if we wanted it moved, we would pay for it. If they wanted it moved, they would pay for it. But I mean, I'm perfectly fine with sending it back to an attorney to look at.
Yeah, I haven't been part of those conversations.
Right,
It's just, one of those things, when I look at a contract, it's kind of like a prenuptial
Well, you're the
agreement.
attorney, so
We're
you're much
all-
more so than I am.
We're all smiling and happy when we enter into it, but we write contract provisions for what happens when we're not seeing eye to eye.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that language fully protects the board in that future instance where there might be a disagreement as to who wants what and who's responsible for what. So it might be worthwhile to pull that contract. I know there's a timing issue that sat dormant for quite a while, entirely attributable to me not having time to prepare that contract. I don't know if there's a significant risk to them financially if you all delay that till next month, but I feel like there needs to be more conversation to make that abundantly clear what you all are agreeing to because of the substantial nature of that potential future cost.
I think if that's your recommendation, the board's in agreement with that. Sir, I would think so.
So how would we, on this then, do we,
Just pull the
Pull-
quarterback club contract, the lease.
That would be my
And then
recommendation
all
is
you will
to
address at that point.
pull
would be
that contract from the consent agenda and then approve a motion to approve the remainder of the consent
so
agenda.
a separate motion to remove that from the consent agenda?
That would be
The only
good.
thing remaining in contract center copier contracts.
Yes, I saw that. And then since we're in the motion already and this is part of discussion,
I believe Amanda made that motion so she could amend her motion if Mr. Brickler is willing to second the amended motion.
Okay, I'd like to amend my motion to approve the consent agenda. I would like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the removal of the quarterback club contract. Does that suffice?
It does.
Second?
so that was a motion by Ms. Glass and a second by Mr. Brickler. Any additional discussion, questions?
Is this something that could be done, like finding out the answer to the question that you just mentioned to us? Is that something that could be done over email? And then
I
That would-
probably should have had Mr. Bug put it in writing. I apologize for that. It was just a discussion that we had, and I may have it in email. I may, just to be honest with you.
Are you asking whether that uncertainty can be resolved
Yes.
just by communication between
Yes.
me and them?
no,
Or-
I don't even know what is the option, like if we're able to collect the information that we need, that we feel like is missing right now, is there action that can happen before the next board meeting so as not to delay?
Yes, there is. That's a good question. One practice that lots of boards do engage in is to approve contracts subject to final approval by the board attorney and the superintendent so that those types of final wording can be resolved after a board meeting. So if you want to make that as a separate motion solely as to that contract, after you have this vote on the consent agenda, then you could move to approve the quarterback club contract subject to final legal counsel approval.
Yes.
And then if that issue gets resolved to our satisfaction as to what superintendent has shared with you, then it would be capable of being executed. And if superintendent and I feel like it's still not quite resolved to our satisfaction, we would bring it back to the board to explain the answers that we've received.
Thank you.
Is that suitable to everybody?
Yeah, if we can rectify it as soon as we can, that would be good. I think that, like you
Yeah,
said, it's
that's-
been laying for a while.
Yeah, if you want to, later this week, in fact, if you want to try to find a time they're available to talk, I'll make time in my calendar
Yeah, yes, sir.
tail end of the week.
I'm pretty sure Mr. Buck's tied up tomorrow, as I talked to him today, but I'm pretty sure he's tied up tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, find out when they're available and I'll do my best to clear my schedule.
So do we want to amend the amendment?
No, go ahead and vote on the motion, and then you can entertain a separate motion solely as to that contract.
Okay, all right. Any other discussion on any other items in the consent agenda? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the motion passes 5-0. Now, can I go directly into that one again? Okay. So can we have a motion to approve conditionally the quarterback club contract,
Subject to final.
subject to final approval by Superintendent Atkins and Mr. Chenoweth?
So moved.
Second.
Okay,
I
that's a-
actually, I think, have it in a text message instead of email. I'd rather have it in an email.
So that was a motion by Ms. McCowan, a second by Ms. Springate. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion passes 5-0.
Can we do a 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Before we go into the regular agenda?
Can we take a 5-minute recess?
Can we? It's okay.
Is that okay with everybody? 5 minutes? Okay. All right, we'll call the meeting back to order and move on to the regular agenda. First item is to accept notification of personnel matters.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Springate.
Second.
Second by Ms. Glass. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item B, accept notification of payment of bills.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Springate.
Second.
Second by Ms. Glass.
like I'm screaming.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item C is approving the minutes of the December 12th, 2022 and December 19th, 2022 board meetings.
So moved.
Second.
And I have a question, discussion.
Yeah, motion by Ms. Springate and a second by Ms. Glass. I had to say it before I forgot.
Yeah, that's okay. On that one, we need 3 votes for the December 12th, but we don't have 3 members that were on the board then. How?
Yeah, we can approve
Right,
them
but you
if,
have to watch them, correct?
It essentially, I mean, it would be good if everybody had watched it to review it. I don't remember if Mr. Brickler
I think they
and
were
I think you were both
present, so,
present.
yeah.
But generally, the notion is, unless you have reason to know that something on it is inconsistent with what actually happened, then anybody that's on the board at the time it's approved can vote to approve the minutes.
Perfect. I just wanted to double check and clarify. Thank you.
You're welcome.
so we can all vote then on that.
You
Okay.
can, yes.
All right. So the motion was by Ms. Springate, the second was Ms. Glass. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So that's passes 5-0. Item D is the 23-24 draft budget. Mr. Smith?
Okay, so the draft budget, there's a brief presentation here, but I wanted to just give you a brief primer on how I do the draft budget. As you guys know, there are 3 budget cycles that occur during the year. The draft is in January, the tentative is in May, and then the working budget is in September. The draft budget, all I typically ever do for the draft budget is just hit the button in Munis and copy it over, because none of the information that we have as of this point is going to be reflected in the May tentative budget. So we just don't have enough information to spend a lot of time adjusting numbers there. With that said, in the presentation, page 1, I reiterate when the draft, the tentative, and then the working budgets are due in 2023. The next slide, KRS 160.470 requires that every local board of education approve a draft budget before January 31st, 2023 for the upcoming school year. Page 4 talks about the FY24 draft budget report was created from the current year budget. There's not enough information at this time to warrant any material changes to the budget. A more developed budget picture for FY24 will be available at the tentative budget revision due in May. Page 5, key items to be considered before the May tentative budget. Things that we'll take into consideration when drafting and working on the budget are SEEK adjustments, grant adjustments. We'll be working on our salary and benefit projections based on allocations that we'll be doing based on current year AADA numbers, debt service changes, and then any inflationary adjustments. We'll take that into consideration. And so, with that said, that's basically the draft budget in a nutshell.
Any questions or discussion?
I do have a couple questions, but if other members have questions first, I'm happy to listen.
Go ahead.
One question I have is, does this budget include the reading and math interventionists that we currently have? Mr. Atkins?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, I'm sorry.
I didn't know you were talking to me. You typically ask him. I can't imagine. It's just basically the way he said he created the budget. It's whatever we had plus inflation.
If the interventionist is in the current year budget, then it's in that budget. If it's not, it's not, so.
And are those positions funded from the district budget?
No, the schools pay for them.
Okay, I would like to see that included. I don't know how other members feel, if we want to put that on the agenda for next month.
You would like to see that in a draft budget?
I would like to make sure that we're including reading and math interventionalists as part of our planning and our priority setting. And yes, something that would be included in our draft budget, an expectation that that would be included and funded by the district. So we would be able to maybe see some data, talk about if that's effective, and then also see some cost kind of information provided.
Okay.
And then my next question is, does this budget include staff increases, salary raises for staff?
It does not. It's an exact duplicate copy of the current year's budget.
And the current year's budget did include staff raises?
It did. You approved a 2%.
So would this budget, if it's an exact duplicate of that budget, also include raises or the expectation?
It's an exact duplicate of the money we spent this year in a budget.
So there's no raise included.
So if you were to add another 2%,
next
then
year.
next year it would be included.
It's
Okay.
just
Yeah, and I think that's probably something we want to see, because if it's just a duplicate of the raises we did last year, then I would anticipate raises this year. But if it's, not including those for some reason, then I definitely think that's something we want to kind of start having discussions about and getting some estimates. What are the step increases,
We're
dollar
working on
kind of
that.
amount, and then, that sort of thing. And then the last thing, I just had a question about the SEEK adjustments and the grant adjustments. Do you have an idea or an estimate about what that might be costing? I know I've talked to other districts and they have a pretty good idea, $1 million, $700,000, that kind of thing.
$1
Do you
million
have any
of
kind of
what? Explain that $1 million. It-
decreases
Decrease.
to their district budget due to SEEK adjustments and grant adjustments that are significant revenue changes. Some
What
other
type of
folks have-
grants would they be talking about? Were they talking about the expiration of ESSER dollars? Because that would be
No.
$1.5 million to $2 million for us.
No, I guess a better way of asking it is, on page 5 of the budget presentation that we have, the first item says significant revenue changes. Under that, we have SEEK adjustments and grant adjustments. And my question is, do we have an estimate or an idea of about how much we're looking at in significant revenue changes? What does that mean? Or can we have an estimate, just an idea?
Yeah, we've discussed a little bit of that as to what our attendance would look like, which is where the SEEK adjustment comes from. If you remember, I'll share attendance with you every day, and that's the importance of attendance. It really is. So I try to do that. But what we're looking at, it could be anywhere, because again, SEEK is going to have another $100 added to it this year. Now, we won't get that full $100 because of the way our assessments grow. So we won't see the full $100. But if SEEK were to stay the same, we were looking at what we talked last week about it, Mr. Smith, somewhere between $500,000 and $750, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Tentatively, if our average adjusted daily attendance stays where we're at, there will be somewhere around $500,000 to $750,000 decrease without taking into effect the additional $100 per student for the SEEK.
And what about as far as the grant adjustments? Do you have any
I
kind of
wouldn't have any
estimate
idea
or
about
idea
grant.
about?
I really wouldn't. Mr. Smith may have some ideas about the grant adjustments. I don't. I wouldn't know.
Yeah, the
Unless
special,
you're talking about Title I, and we usually get a hold harmless on that pretty soon.
yeah, the grant numbers usually come out in March, April, I think, the time frame, and I don't expect any significant adjustments there.
I guess I'm confused why it was listed as significant revenue changes.
I think what it says, key items to be considered before the May tentative. So the budget this year is flat. It doesn't include any adjustments, but we've got to do a deep dive into those 2 items for the May. So
Right,
we
this-
should
this is-
expect to
yeah.
discuss that probably well in advance of the May budget, but it's not included in what we're looking
Yeah,
at.
Okay, it's a significant change, but he says he doesn't anticipate any, which is great news, so that's wonderful.
the point of the slide is to illustrate that these are the things that we'll take into consideration as I flesh out the budget between now and the tentative. And those are potential areas that could change. I have no idea as to how they're going to change or if they will change, but they could change. And if they do, those might significantly affect our funding for next year.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Just going back to what you said, there would be potentially an expected decrease of 500 to 750,000.
That's right.
What was that from?
So prior to COVID, when COVID came along in 2020, KDE froze all the districts' SEEK funding to be based on the 2018, 2019 attendance. And so for every year since then, we have gotten our SEEK funding based on that attendance. For next fiscal year, KDE has suggested, well, they haven't suggested, they're saying as of now that we're going to go back to our average daily attendance. And as we have began looking at those numbers are down slightly from 2018 to 2019.
Thank you.
I will say, and I shared that in it's my cold acting up again, but I shared in my Friday update, either this Friday or last Friday, there's a very intentional focus by a group of superintendents and educators in general to ask legislators to let us base it on 18-19 data again, simply because of what we're going to see with the clip of the ESSER dollars and what we're seeing with attendance. And if you'll recall, we used to tell our kids to, Hannah, you might feel a little bit bad today, take you a Motrin and go on to school. Well, now we tell folks and teacher staff as well, hey, if you don't feel good, don't come to school. And that's what we're seeing a lot of. It really is. So, and it's not us, it's across the state. We're seeing that across the state. A lot of districts are much worse off than we are. We're very fortunate to be where we're at. But yeah, I shared that in a Friday update. But hopefully we can get something done.
There's also a movement to ask, based on exactly what the superintendent just said, to switch to average daily membership instead of average daily attendance. That way you're getting credit for those students who are staying home because it's better for the community for them to stay home.
Yes.
But they're still a student on your roster, and it actually is taking more effort when they come back to make up the missed work and to get them caught back up with their peers. So the district doesn't save any money by not educating that kid who stayed home on a Friday, but average daily attendance punishes you for that kid having stayed home when they had the fever. Average daily membership lets you count that student because they were still enrolled on Friday, and you're still helping them catch up on the work they missed on that Friday. So for most districts, switching to average daily membership would help. I think for the biggest districts,
The growth district.
it will.
Scott County is a growth district. They're growing in crazy numbers. So it would hurt them.
It would hurt
Well,
a few districts, but help
yeah,
a
I
whole
think
lot. It
Paris
would
had
help
a
all
little
of the
growth, some
flood
of the ones around us,
districts.
yeah.
It would help all the districts that had tornadoes and flooding,
Yes.
where there's still struggles for kids to even make it to
Yes.
the building because of family issues. Districts are still responsible for those kids, but they're not showing up in the building every day.
Mm-hmm.
I have two questions real quick. One for you and one's for you on that you just talked about, but I'm gonna start with you so I don't forget it. The draft budget that we're looking at, that's basically just a starting point, right? We don't have a lot of information and data to put in there yet. You're gonna get more in the upcoming months that you're gonna be able to share with us as we move toward the May tentative. I just wanna make sure I have that clear.
You are correct. The whole purpose of the draft budget in January is just to get the process started. I don't think it doesn't have to be submitted to KDE, but you are required to get the process started by adopting a draft budget in January of every year. And so, yes, it's just a starting point. Hence the point of just copying from last year. That will be the starting point. We're going to do salary projections. We're going to talk about the things that we are going to want to try to do from a budget standpoint from our staff and salaries and those types of things. Make sure that we have all the positions that we need in there and just really flesh that out thoroughly to make sure that we have a good idea of what that budget will be.
Great. So yeah, to Ms. Springate's point, as we know what we're doing with teacher salaries or
Yeah.
reading and math and everything, that's going to get put in there, and we're going to be notified as a board as that information becomes available that we can then share out. Right.
In May, at the tentative budget, we will go through all that. The May budget will essentially be the budget that we will operate from next year, with the only exceptions being any additional last minute changes from a revenue standpoint from the tax base. any adjustments that we may need to make during the summer. But yes, that'll basically be what the final picture will look like by the time May gets here.
Okay.
And I think we actually vote on the salary. Don't we vote on the
We-
increase, if we're gonna take increases
Yes.
or what the increase is gonna be? So we'll know that. We'll set that.
Perfect. Cool. Thank you. And my question for you, the school attendance by membership, what is the process of changing to that format from what we do currently? And how do we do an analysis of if that makes sense for us and then move toward that?
Legislation has to change that. That's
Oh, okay.
that's a legislator guided process. And what we would look at is basically, and I can assure you that ADM will be better for us because it allows you to count everybody enrolled. Right now we have 39, as of today, it was 3,900 flat. That's what we had enrolled in schools. We probably had, our attendance today was 94 something. So we would, ADA, we're based on that 94 something percent. ADM, we're based on those 3,900 students. That's everybody. Whereas right now, our funding is based on the percentage of daily attendance.
Could you send us some information about that and like specifically like what legislators are spearheading that, just so we could flood? I mean, if that's going to be something that's going to positively affect the district,
Yep.
it would be nice, you know, if we could flood their inboxes with communication, and then any other parents or staff that wanted to do that. Doesn't always work, but that's the way we can talk to our legislators. If you can send us some information, it's hard for me. It just sometimes all that gets bogged down, but some, you know, concrete, real information on that, and then we can then discuss that, you know,
To
with
that
our
point-
legislators.
When would that vote happen, or when would that?
It'll be in this session. When is the
It's
session
a
over?
short
Is it-
session.
Yeah.
It's a short session.
Yeah, it's a short
so
session. I can't recall when it's over.
Probably. Sherry? Come on, Sherry.
Well, I can tell you that KSBA has put out quite a bit of information about the legislators and who to contact and how to call that 1-800 line. And, you know, like Mr. Chenoweth said, some districts would be winners in this and some would be losers. So if you have growth in your district, you would be a loser. And trust me when I say those districts are not going to be calling their legislators saying, change it, change it. My question is, historically, we've had pretty average flat attendance from year to year to year. We're basing our SEEK for the past few years on the 2018 numbers. What were our numbers then? I mean, I seem to remember it was over 4,000 enrollment, and now we're down to 39 or both above and below.
Mr. Wells might know that. I'm not sure he'd know it off the top of his head, but he might know that.
I bet he does. It's a pretty important number because that's what we're being funded on.
Yeah, so our enrollment, it's always a fluid number. We have students come and go every day, but on average, if you're looking for a ballpark, I would say pre-COVID, we were in the high 3,900s, close to 4,000. Currently, I think today we were at 3,900 exactly.
It was flat.
It was flat, yep.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the draft budget? Okay, then we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Oh, did we have a motion? I thought we had a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the draft 2023-2024 draft budget.
Second.
Sorry about that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Nay.
So the motion passes 4-1.
If I could just explain my vote, I'm just not comfortable voting for this budget when we haven't followed our policy and our APs. So, thank you.
Okay, item E is the hiring of a new attorney. So this item is really just to charge Mr. Adkins with going out and getting, excuse me, an RFQ to start the process of the hiring. So I'll need a motion and a second.
A motion?
Motion by Mr. Brickler
Second.
and a second by Ms. McCown. Any discussion? I think the only thing that I would say, I think we've got a good base for this from the RFQ that
previous,
we
yeah,
did
that's-
just 2 years ago.
So
So
there
we'll
should be
probably
something available
start with that as a base.
that we already have.
And then the timing on that, would that be What's typically the time? I just don't recall.
We have to run it for 2 weeks. Am I correct in that, Grant? We have to run it in the newspaper for 2 weeks, and then we'll come bring it back. And at that point, you guys, I guess at the next meeting, we'll decide whether you want to interview, how you want to just look at the qualifications and choose someone. I mean, that's completely up to you as well.
Okay, so we should have an
So I should
agenda
have-
item
Yeah.
next month, and you should be able to do
I
that.
should have
within-
everything ready for you to look at that and make a decision as to how you want to go about that next month.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
And if you want to move quicker, you may want to do a special call, because probably in 3 weeks, we should have everything we would need. We get it started running, might be able to run it Thursday. Bob, you guys run one Thursday, right? Wednesday or Thursday, your paper? Thursday. So if we get one in there Thursday, that'd be 1 week, and then, yeah, we should be able to have it pretty quick.
Okay. I have another question on that. I don't remember.
Would you just follow up with us if you happen to get it a little earlier and
Yeah.
we could get the information, then if we
Yeah,
decide?
I'll in my Friday updates, I'll let you know as to,
Yeah.
I think,
I
Grant, would
don't-
it even be okay to share the names of, or not, to the board members?
Once you have that information, you can distribute the
Okay.
packets, so to speak, to
That's
board
what I-
members, so they can all review that before they
Gotcha.
come together.
And I don't know that it's so urgent that we would need a special meeting before the next meeting to get back together to review. If anybody has any other thoughts on that, I'm open, but I think we'd be fine to add it as an.
So then we could really run it if you wanted to, until February 15th or something, 14th, 15th. Just give you time to get more applicants.
One of the things I believe, Mr. Hawkins directly sent the notice to multiple law firms that were within a certain distance of Versailles.
Do you
My-
know-
My new law firm wasn't one of those because it has a Paintsville address, but, so I had to specifically request one of those letters.
So Ms. Cooper, would you have that information?
Was it just education law firms, Mr. Chenoweth, or?
It was, at the time, KSBA's Council of School Board Attorneys had a
They've got-
really
okay.
good list of all the school attorneys. That list has not perhaps been kept fully updated, but I think Mr. Powell at KSBA would be able to help with that.
Okay, we'll reach out to them and see about it, check on that list, Ms. Cooper.
And as far as timing, as I said, when this arose, I'm here for as long as you all need me, so don't rush the process.
We
I
certainly
don't see any
appreciate that as
reason
well.
to
Thank you,
rush.
sure do. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Okay, any other discussion on this item? Go ahead and vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Okay, the motion passes 5-0. Item F is to amend the 2023-2024 instructional calendar.
It's a very minor amendment.
Yeah, so
It's something we have to do.
if you're experiencing any deja vu from December, it was on the December meeting. And there's no changes to student days, all that remains the same. I look at that calendar over and over and over. And so I do apologize that there was one thing that we need to go back and amend. But there was, basically what I did was add an additional teacher work day, which thus adds a contract day on everyone's, a day onto everyone's contract, which was certainly not the intent. So all I've done is remove that day and just replaced it with a student day and backed the last day up a day. So no changes in the number of student days. All that remains the same. It's just, we just end school a day earlier than the calendar I presented in December. So I apologize.
Kids will be upset.
Yeah.
I guess I'll take motions to amend the 2023-2024 instructional calendar.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Ms. Springate. Any discussion or other questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item G is approve creation of a new position.
So what I have put before the board tonight is the creation of a district counselor position. The short version is that it would help support the Student Services Office, which is part of my house. It would support the Special Ed Department, and it would support the Curriculum Instruction Department. For example, Jill Hargis, who's our district social worker, does a lot of truancy for us. Over the years, as our mental health issues have increased, some of her duties have changed to be, she's one of our leads in the district. on mental health. And so to be able to have a position that can help support her on the truancy piece, the home visits, things like that would be beneficial. On the same token, we have counselors in our building that do a lot of 504 meetings. And so again, kind of taking them away from some of the mental health issues they could be dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So being able to have a position that can carry some of that load, take some of that load off of our building level mental health specialists. And then also supporting the curriculum instruction department with things like gifted assessments and those things. And then also just to be able to do the mental health issues. I know we keep coming back to that, but to be able to just support our schools in that aspect, being able to go do observations that some of our folks in schools don't always have the time to do, to be able to really do some intense intervention with kids, do observations, provide feedback across the district. So it's a pretty all-encompassing position that we are asking the board to create tonight.
With some of the services we've added to it, help coordinate those services, our social emotional services that we've helped with our mental health specialists in schools that we've added, our programs we've added, just give someone to monitor those with fidelity.
Yeah, I think I included a job description. I hope I did. So it goes into more detail, but I just tried to touch upon some of the things that position could help the district do.
And how does this get funded? General fund?
Mr. Wells, you said in an email, when I asked you that question earlier, you said that the cost of the position would be anywhere from $47,000 to $79,000, just depending on the rank and experience that we've talked about before.
Correct. And I will try, I'm such a creature of habit. I will try to do better in the future if positions are brought forward to include those on the information that you have ahead of time. So my apologies.
That way you could see then like how many years experience pays this, that type of thing.
Any other questions? Okay. All those in favor?
I make a.
We don't have a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we made a motion. I'm sorry.
I make a motion that we approve this agenda item.
Second.
Yeah.
Motion by Ms. Springate, second by Mr. Cowan. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Item H is to approve the updated salary schedule.
And so that's just since that is not a pre-existing position, this position would now be reflected on the salary schedule. So that's the amendment.
It has, we've had a bass fishing team.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but we have never paid the coach. And I hate to ask someone to work and not pay them, so. What was it, Garrett? It could run anywhere. It's the bottom,
It says level E status?
yeah, it's level E status. It's somewhere between $1,500 and $2,300, I think is what it is for the year.
Oh, here's the schedule.
1601 to 2001, if I'm looking.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the updated salary schedule?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass, second by Ms. Springate. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Item J is to approve the revised CM agreement with the high school track and field.
Yes, so we got the final bids back for the athletic field and track in December, and the construction cost actually decreased, so the construction manager owner agreement decreased by $15,710 due to those decreased costs. We're going to have a BG1, revised BG1 to approve in just a minute, but it's because those amounts just transferred from the construction line down to the contingency line. So that's the reason those costs decreased, because we're going to revisit that concession and restroom area.
Is there a motion to approve the revised construction management agreement for the track and field?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Mr. Brickler. Any discussion?
How much did you say that decreased, Mr. Smith?
$15,710.
15,000. Thank you.
And it sounds like the decrease was due to scaling back the project. So they took off the bathrooms and concession stands. And then, so I guess when that comes time to build those, you would still, have to pay your architect and construction manager, I would assume, when they do that. And it would be on a different BG one.
Got it.
A whole different process, so.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion passes 5-0. Item K, approve change orders 3 and 5 for the high school project.
Oh, yeah, there's one. J.
Did I miss one?
J.
Oh, I thought, okay, sorry. Item J, approve the revised BG1 for the track and field.
So the revised BG1 illustrates and reflects the bids that were received for the project in December. It also reflects the movement of what I just said from amounts from construction costs down to contingency, so that when we revisit the concession stand and the restrooms, that's where the dollars will be for that project.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the revised BG1 for the high school track and field?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Mr. Brickler. Any discussion, questions? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion passes 5-0. Now we'll go on to K. Approve change orders number 3 and 5 for the high school project.
So I'll start with change order number 3. There is a summary document, I think it's page 3 of change order number 3 that highlights several, so this change order involves several of the bid packages. The total credit is $74,324.95 for that change order. And again, it encompasses several different smaller credits that were involved from just some different modifications that were created through the project.
Can I have a motion to approve change orders 3 and 5 for the high school project?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
by Mr. Brickler.
Before we vote on both of those, do you want to talk about number 5?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry.
Okay, we didn't know we were going to lump them. Since we're lumping them,
Yeah.
have a discussion before we do it.
Correct. So number 5 is a credit for $795, and it's from a substitution of a flush metal wall panel. But it equates to a credit or reduction for $795 for that change order. Now, there is a change order number 4, a small change order that is in process, because that is the question I asked. There's 3 and 5 versus 4. So that will be coming probably at the next board meeting, but it's just a small modification that they don't have all the information yet to be able to put the change order to the board. So number 4 will be coming henceforth.
Any questions or discussion further?
Yeah, is this another instance where, since we're getting a credit, is it gonna move to contingency as well, just like the other instance did, or?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so it does.
Actually, I've been, contingency log had been requested. I did not get
Thank you.
Mr. Smith in time to get on the
Thank you.
The one we typically use, for some reason, the backpack is not tracked.
Thank you.
Will this include the change orders for tonight, the credits?
Yeah, they'll be listed as pending.
Okay.
So, perfect. So the ones that were previously approved will show, and then those pending, and then assuming all of them were approved, your total will be at the bottom remaining. So it went up in the previous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Next item, number 14, is communications. Does anyone have any communications they need to review?
I would just say that being a new board member, I've had lots of emails and phone calls from folks throughout the community who've reached out regarding, concerns, questions, things like that they have. So I just wanted to acknowledge that I've heard from several folks that have made every effort to get back to them. And that's all.
So then we get to our discussion items. So discussion item 15A is the bathroom locker designs for the new high school. Ms. Lemire, is this you?
I brought bathroom plans to put in. Sometimes it's hard to describe what the condition is without actually looking at the plans. There should be a folder in there that's called Woodford, which probably includes everything you're supposed to go to. So I know there was, wow, I'm a little louder than I realized. Or I guess the speaker's just right there. It's a little of an odd effect, honestly. So I know there's questions about the bathrooms and how the bathroom's going to work at the high school. How you all want them to work is really on you, but I will point out what they are and what they're doing so that you can see what is going into the new building in order to think about them. So what is showing up right now on this first page, if you can just zoom out a little bit. Highlighted in yellow are where all the banks of restrooms are in the building. On the two classroom wings, those wings stack, and there's bathrooms on the second floor as well. So we have gang restrooms outside the gymnasium. We have restrooms in the storm shelter, and then we have restrooms in every wing of the building. If you go to the next sheet, please. So this is an enlargement of kind of your typical restroom layout. In all cases, except in the storm shelter, we have a girls' and a boys' bathroom, and then we have a second private bathroom that can be entered separately, and we'll give students, if you want to use it that way, privacy to go there individually without having to use the boys' or the girls' restrooms. And that happens in both wings and in the restroom outside of the gymnasium.
Sorry, can you just show that one more time? It's kind of cut off.
Yeah. So here you have the boys, the girls, and then over here with access directly out the corridor, you have an individual toilet that can be used.
Is that a staff bathroom? Is it locked, unlocked?
That is however you want to use it.
Do we have other bathrooms for staff in the plan anywhere?
No. So it was discussed that it could be a staff bathroom or it could be a gender-neutral bathroom.
And is there a difference if we designate something as a staff bathroom versus a general use bathroom as far as locking and things go?
There would be, and it depends how you want to access those bathrooms. So, and it's how you monitor them. So if you want them to be locked from the outside and the staff has to use a key to get in them, You could do that, or they're open and you're just monitoring them to see how they're used. So potentially no, but potentially yes, depending on how you want that hardware to work.
And how many are there again? How many of those bathrooms, individual bathrooms, are there total?
5.
Okay. So spread out throughout the entire school.
Yep.
So we could, theoretically, I'm not saying we are, but we could set some as staff, some as general use.
Yes.
Okay.
And so if I'm looking at this correctly, kind of the bathrooms are grouped together, you kind of walk in a common entrance, and then you make your decision on where you're gonna go, either to the boys, the girls, or
That's
the
right.
private.
That's right.
Okay. And the boys and the girls have locked stalls.
Yes.
The boys have urinals.
That's right.
I can see, okay.
Has this been discussed with, staff or parents at all, or is this kind of the first time we're broaching this subject and talking about it, Mr. Atkins, do you know?
I do know in the fall forum that it was, I'm sorry, in the fall forum, it was addressed, and Mr. Hughes answered the question at that point. And what we had discussed were the single stall restrooms is what we would recommend for students that need privacy or security.
And if we did that, would teachers be able to access the bathroom when they have the short breaks? Would they have to travel a great distance? Have we talked with teachers and staff kind of about the logistics of that?
That would be beyond me. I wouldn't know.
That might be something I think I would be interested in at least hearing from staff members if they're, further away from the bathroom, they have 5 minutes. And then, I guess all of the staff would use that one in the corridor. And so then you would kind of have to consider that. if
Oh,
you made
I
that.
couldn't see why they couldn't all be used by either staff or students that would need a single stall restroom.
And again, I don't know, I'm just saying, I
Yeah.
think that I would be interested in hearing from staff. I'm not a staff member, so I don't know how short the breaks are, how far the bathrooms are. I mean, it's just something I think common courtesy I would want to hear.
I think at times too, we run into plumbing and regulations and those types of things as well. Am I correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by that. Plumbing wise, we're required to do a set number, code number of water closets and lavatories, and we meet all of that. So, how they're used is really up to
Right,
you
it's up
all.
to the district.
Yep.
What are other school districts doing? You've done a lot of brand new schools recently. What are other schools doing?
There's, bathrooms are changing quite a lot. The idea of having a single-use occupancy is fairly new in this kind of configuration that really makes it available to all. It used to be you just had the gang restrooms. So this is an evolution from there to allow students that option. And also, more flexibility for staff too, because it used to be you would have the staff like restrooms 2 in the administration area. So now we have 5 kind of spread out however you want to use them. Going into the future, we're seeing gang restrooms go away just altogether, and you would just do a stack of 10 water closets, individual rooms that then anybody can use. That's a little bit costlier because you're really building each individual room. And then you would have those individual rooms, and then you might have sets of gang sinks where people come out and wash their hands, but then everybody goes into a private stall, and that's the direction we're seeing restrooms go.
Okay.
So would the newer restrooms that you're talking about where they're separate rooms, would those, that's just anybody can use? It would be a situation like this, except it would be floor to ceiling doors or something like that?
What you would normally have is, can you scroll up just a little bit? Oh, sorry. If you could scroll up just a little bit. Is that on? Yeah, I'm sorry. Up, down.
Whatever, we'll figure it out.
It can vary greatly, what the size and how those are configured. It wouldn't be a room that is quite that small because that's really tight.
Yeah.
But you would have some smaller rooms that just have a water closet, and then you would have some that actually have the ADA clearance around them, so they'd be a little bit bigger. And then generally, You might decide, for the ADA, you're required to have the lavatory within the space, but you could also just have smaller rooms, and you would just kind of stack them together. They wouldn't be this small, that would be, because this is really partition sized, but it would vary on the side of those.
So I will say, I really appreciate you going through this with us because we have had a lot of questions about it and the layout and what it's going to look like. You heard a lot of concerns tonight, and I think this really gives a lot of visibility to the fact that we are going to have some options and make some choices. We're not making these choices tonight, but now we can see where our choices are going to go. And I think that's really helpful, knowing that we do have multiple options for these single bathrooms within the parameters of the gang bathrooms, like you mentioned. And then we just have to figure out logistics and make sure the staff's taken care of, make sure anybody that needs those restrooms is taken care of. So, thank you.
Just briefly on the locker rooms as well.
Yes.
If we could go to the next slide, please. And zoom out just a little bit. So here, on kind of the plan north is the top side of the sheet, you have the general PE locker rooms. There are no showers in that. There are changing rooms, so you can actually go into a room and change. It has a door on it. The door stops about 8 inches from the floor, so there's a little bit of privacy when you're changing within those changing rooms. And then on the plan south side is where you have the teams locker rooms, and that's where there's showers within those locker rooms for those teams. Boys, girls, just depending on the season, what team is going to be in those locker rooms. Additionally, you do have another gang toilet right outside that has one of those individual toilet restrooms in it. So potentially if somebody needed another area, they could step right outside the door and also have that flexibility. In addition, there is a coach's restroom. And again, this goes to how the school wants to use those spaces. But if you had and needed more flexibility, you could have access to another restroom in the corner.
So it is already planned in that we have some options, again, to accommodate really anybody that needs a private use space to change, use a restroom. That's really good to see. I think that'll put a lot of people's concerns at ease. That we're providing that option.
And the next two plans are just enlarged versions of the gym if you needed to see them closer up.
So with the team locker rooms, do they have the more private changing room with them as well?
Can we go to the next slide, please? I believe so, but no, they do not. So they have the larger lockers, they have individual toilets, and they have individual showers.
Individual toilets.
So if you had an individual during a team event that needed to use wanted to use a separate restroom or a changing area, they would go to the other locker room, right?
They could go to the other locker room, they could go to the restroom outside.
Okay.
There is one other possibility that I thought of, if we could go to the full floor plan again and scroll in. I'll use the microphone again. If you could zoom in to this area right there. A little further to the bottom of the, little bit further. All right, right there. So, zoom out just a tad, because I want to see that storage and the restroom. Right there, perfect. So, kind of late in the design, we had to make a few adjustments to how the commons area was working. And when we did that, we had to rearrange this set of gang restrooms right here. And when we did that, we ended up with this void area right here, and we turned it into storage because all through design, we heard that storage was really needed for the gym. However, this is not programmed storage space. It was just kind of bonus space that we added. So if you needed some more flexibility in terms of thinking about where you could create additional places for changing or something, it could potentially be this area as well.
Thank you. One of the issues with the locker room, though, and Mr. Chenoweth may be able to correct me on this, isn't there legislation that says like males can't participate on female teams, that type of thing? And I know that's not the legal jargon. That's my poor shot at it, but
There is that legislation from, I believe, the last session. It does only run one direction. It prevents biological males from participating on female-only teams. It does not prohibit females, so you can still have like a lot of schools are having, a female kicker or things on the football team. So there are some sports that are co-ed already. So that legislation only addresses one of those situations.
gotcha. Thank you.
And it's still, multiple states have done that. It's still subject to legal challenge, but I'm not aware of any current challenge to that.
Thank you. Right.
I do have a question. If they wanted to switch to that, what you talked about that some schools are going to, that's just a bank of the individual stalls instead of the gang restrooms, are we beyond the point of no return for that design change? How substantial would that be? Is it a different footprint?
We are beyond the point of no return for that. I say that we could make it happen. I would have to do a plumbing code count because you would lose, the fact is gang restrooms are the most cost-efficient way to get the maximum number of water closets in any given space. So I would need to go back to the code. I would need to make sure that if we do that, we could squeeze 5, 6, 7 individual toilets into that same footprint that we have the gang toilets now. And I don't know without trying to do those drawings.
Okay, any other questions for Ms. Lemire?
Is that something you could ballpark for us though? And just so that we could have it maybe at the next meeting, just so that we have an idea of what that would even look like?
I can
without
definitely.
going to any additional expense.
I can definitely do a little sketch that would show an overlay of what that looks like over one of the restrooms, because all the restrooms do have the same footprint, so I could do it once so you could see what that looks like.
Okay,
All right?
thank you.
Let me add to that. Just to do my due diligence, I don't have opinion on it. It's very important that you all understand that decision, the sooner the better. No matter what you did here, if you go into altering these restrooms into single compartment, it will be a cost. So depends on how many and what we do, but could be substantial. Underground plumbing starts next week. So every day that plumbing starts going in the ground, that cost starts going up. But like she said, anything can be done. It's at what cost and delay and money would you be willing to, inherit?
Yeah, and there's a lot of, underground plumbing's happening, which obviously all of this is underground. But there's shop drawings that we've done, when you do it back to back, there's carriers that all the water closets sit on. And so all of that is kind of in process of being ordered and reviewed and things like that. So, if you wanted to look at that scenario, it might even be best that maybe you just do it for the 2 gang rooms on the second floor, wings, so that the underground can keep moving forward. And that might be an option to kind of, get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Still gonna cost you money as you think about it, because those things are ordered, but, there are lots of different ways to think about how to make some of these adjustments.
The other reason that I like that layout has nothing to do with the issues we've been talking about tonight, but we deal with drug transactions, fights, vaping, all kinds of things that happen in restrooms. And if you have the multiple stalls with a common area for washing, then any staff member can supervise all of the restrooms, because any staff member can see that only one child is going into one stall at one time, and you can have potentially even better coverage for supervision of all activities that has nothing to do with biology.
All right, thank you
Anything
guys.
else? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think that takes us to the end of our regular agenda.
Can I please ask a question?
Yes.
Before this is, I think a lot of the question that we've been hearing, at least that I've been hearing from parents, a lot of the questions that I've been hearing from folks out in the community and around the use of restrooms, use of a restroom by someone who is not the same biological, who identifies differently than their biological, the sex they were born at birth. There would still, I guess my question is around the requirement. Is there any kind of requirement that only biological female, only biological male can use these restrooms or these locker rooms? Would offering an alternative restroom that anybody could have access to that's private, would that meet the needs of legally for folks that identify as something other than?
I understand. So the answer to that, unfortunately, the best answer to that right now is it is still not clear. You know, the one thing that I wish I had for all the school districts I represent is a clear answer to that question. A whole lot of my job as general counsel to lots of boards of education is trying to look at risk management. Like, where are the potential lawsuits and what advice can I give to prevent those? Or a lot of times the way my dad would phrase that is, sometimes you just have to pick your plaintiff, because no matter what decision you make, somebody is going to have an available lawsuit against you. So which lawsuit do you want to pick? And we look at the trends in the law as to where those cases are going. And right now, this question is completely up in the air. There had been a real solid direction by nearly every court that had looked at it until here just a couple of weeks ago. There's a new decision that by one of the federal courts of appeals that went the opposite direction. So now it is set up for the Supreme Court to accept review of one of those cases so they can resolve the split amongst the circuits. The best answer I can give to your question is, for many transgender students, some of them, what I see across districts is some of them prefer to have that private restroom. They're not quite ready to use the restroom that corresponds with their gender identity, but they don't feel safe, or they don't feel like they belong in the one that corresponds with their biology. But some of the courts that have looked at that say you can't force those students to only use the segregated or the separate bathroom, because that can constitute gender stereotyping, as in you don't meet the stereotype of a female student and therefore you have to use the segregated bathroom rather than the female bathroom. All of that is it's up in the air. So the options are there, and the extra options should reduce the number of students that have those concerns, but compelling a particular student to use the standalone bathroom may not be a legal option, or it may subject you to liability. And, the board, one of the things that I share every time I discuss this, the board can adopt a policy. They can adopt a policy that says something about using the restroom that corresponds with your biology. But if federal interpretation stays muddy, you're really just asking school employees to make a decision. Do you comply with board policy, or do you comply with what you understand federal law to require of you? Because potentially you're telling employees, take your best hold. Do you want to be in violation of federal law, or do you want to be in violation of your employer's policy? It doesn't solve the problem. It shifts the liability. That's the best answer I can give on all of that.
And does that also apply to locker rooms, or is there different guidance for locker rooms? Because you're talking about states of undress.
Yeah, there really has not been. Nearly every court that has looked at it has carved out and said, very, very carefully said, we're not discussing locker rooms today. We're not discussing locker rooms today. We're not discussing locker rooms today. Because the judges would also very much like to pass the buck on that issue and let some other court handle it when that is the primary issue in a case. Mm-hmm. So I don't have the answer to that question. What I will say is, if you think through that a little bit, part of the way I process through that, we have female coaches of male teams. We have male coaches of female teams. We have athletic trainers or whatever they call some of the student assistants, the managers that are of the opposite gender from the team that they are a manager for. So having nothing to do with transgender students, we already have systems in place where we deal with that. You know, a male coach is not watching the females change. So there are already systems in place for when are certain people in the locker room and how are we protecting individual students' privacy, even though sometimes we do have the opposite gender coming into the room. And most of those just get dealt with on a case-by-case basis. It's nearly impossible to write a one-size-fits-all policy, and that's why there's very few school districts that have attempted a one-size-fits-all policy.
Also, Mr. Chenoweth, it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that
Oh, I will.
I know you will, that your current advice and what we have been practicing at the high school at least is that any student that feels unsafe in their given restroom, whether that's a transgender student or a student that identifies biologically with how they're born, can go to a private restroom.
It is, yes. There can be lots of reasons that a student may want to have access to that private bathroom.
Right.
And I think the best advice to schools is whatever the reason may be, whether it's past trauma, whether it's some medical issue they're dealing with, whether it's a privacy concern or a safety concern, that we ought to accommodate those students, because the primary, I understand, I've heard all the comments tonight. I take those to heart. I've got a couple of teenagers myself. I understand all of that. But it is your all's goal to provide a safe learning environment, discrimination-free learning environment to students, and a safe and discrimination-free work environment for all staff. And a whole lot of this requires us to figure out where two different people have competing claims as to their privacy or as to what makes them feel safe at school. Right now, the law doesn't tell us who wins that battle. Who do we choose to accommodate, and who do we, so to speak, alienate or push away? And there have been studies done. I don't know how broad they are, but I've searched and searched and searched because lots and lots of districts ask me the same questions. If a district does not have a practice of accommodating transgender students, let me word that differently. If a district does have a policy of accommodating transgender students, there is not data that suggests the incidence of assault or other types of misbehavior go up. But if a district does not have a policy of accommodating transgender students, then what does correlate is the victimization of transgender students.
And when you say policy, you don't mean a written policy.
Policy,
You mean
practice, custom, habit.
Workflow or whatever.
Yes, I'm not using policy in the strict legal sense of a board adopted, but more along the lines of a practice or a custom. Yes. And, you know, there's lots of entities that are looking at that, watching that. There's people gathering data that have different motives as to how they look at that data. I appreciate all of that. I wish I had a great answer to it. I would love to have an answer to give to 25 school districts I represent and then never field another phone call on this issue. But right now, I don't have that one-size-fits-all answer. So all of that is the basis for the advice that have been giving. And I am just one attorney, and I know some parents have said that's just the opinion of one attorney. You're welcome to talk to as many of the other attorneys in the state, including the ones employed by KSBA and KDE. We all collaborate. We all talk these things through. We're trying to come up with good answers. We're trying to come up with the best advice because we all have the same goal. And right now, that's the best advice I have for you and my other clients.
Thank you, Mr. Chenoweth.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I feel like that this needs to be something that we continue to talk about and make plans for, because like we heard from Trace Creek and from Ross Torrent, the time is of the essence if changes need to be made to the restroom facilities. And I don't know what that looks like in terms of moving forward and additional data that needs to be collected. But I think, listening to Mr. Chenoweth and listening to the parents and the community members that were here to speak today, I think that this is not going to go away. I think it's important, and I think, we need to do whatever we can to make sure all of our students feel safe, and I think that's all of our goal, whether that, whether they identify as transgender or if they're cisgender or whatever the case may be, we need to make sure that we do everything we can to make sure that all of our students feel safe, and we have a unique opportunity because we're about to build a school. And so I don't know what that looks like I said, moving forward, but I would like to discuss it.
I think we need to understand impacts to the timeline. As Ms. Lemire mentioned, maybe we can do something on the second floor that wouldn't impact the overall timeline. Anything's going to be a budgetary concern. But I think we need to understand what we can do. And if we have to have a certain number of water closets, that could add substantial cost if we do all of them. So I think if we could have some options with some estimates, like you said you were gonna work up, I think that's really helpful. I do think the community needs to understand precisely what we're doing and precisely what that means for everybody that could potentially be using that bathroom. I think we're all in agreement that student safety, no matter who, is our very first and most important objective as a board. So I agree with you. I'm not quite sure how to address that 100% with everything going into the new high school, and maybe more options is a good thing for us. I don't know. But I think it's definitely something that we need to figure out quickly.
And I do think the most important first step was finally hearing from our community and finally allowing them to come in and speak to us, and for us to listen, and for us to get information from the architect and the construction manager and the attorney, and to to commit to just moving forward and discussing and possibly taking action. Don't know what that's going to look like, but at least having the discussion, I think, is just vital. So thank you.
And I'll just say my piece. Like you mentioned, hearing from the community, that's what we're here for. Public comments are open every single regular meeting. So anytime that you want to come speak to us, that's what we're here for, to listen. And, just like this, it's making us rethink some things, and we're asking questions and we're looking at other options. Now, whether we can revamp the construction of the new high school, we don't know that yet. We don't have numbers, we don't have plans. And what I saw looked like we had some really good options that are already in the current plans. So maybe we don't need to change anything, but the fact that we're talking about it, listening to the community, and potentially making changes or looking at other options, I think that's why we're here. So I always encourage people, reach out to us. If you can't come to a meeting, we all have school board emails, we all have contact information, so share. I know Ms. McCown and I, since we're newly elected, we've had a lot of people come to us, which is unfortunately why you're getting these options thrown at you at this first meeting that we're a part of, because that's what we've heard a lot about. So, we need to discuss all of this, whether we make decisions to change things or not. That's yet to be seen, but definitely want to just know that everybody, staff included, reach out to us, let us know. This is not just about the public and the parents, it's about the students and the staff. So everybody is involved in this, and we want to hear from everybody.
I think so too. That's a good point, because I've also heard concerns about safety. The potential for, like you mentioned, Mr. Chenoweth, behavior incidents that could take place. Whether it's vaping or whether it's somebody trying to beat somebody up in a bathroom stall. I mean, what does that look like with our school safety plan, and how would potential changes, having completely private areas, how would that affect anything? But I think it's important to include them too.
Well, and I think the other important one not to forget is the other statistic that Mr. Chenoweth gave us, was that there aren't instances documented of violence in one direction, but the correlation between forcing something there is absolutely correlation to violence and abuse in that direction. And I do want to make sure that we consider every single student in this discussion. And to me, it's not just about the public comment that happened today. It's about every kid that's using those bathrooms. So.
Absolutely.
Anything else on this topic? Okay. I think that brings us to the end of the regular agenda. I think we do have a need for executive session tonight.
Very brief one, yes.
Which,
1C for status
1C,
and strategy and
okay.
pending litigation.
all right, so I need a motion to go into, and I don't think you have to repeat me, right? They can just say move, so moved. Motion to go into executive session pursuant to KRS 61.8101C.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that was a motion by Ms. Springate and a second by Mr. Brickler. We will adjourn to that I'm sorry, we have to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can we have a 5-minute recess or
Yes,
2-minute
I need a
recess?
2-minute recess as well. That Okay. Is there a motion to come back from executive session? Do I have to say all the letters again?
So moved.
Second.
Springate Glass, got it. KRS 61.8101C. Okay. Is there a motion to give consent to the board's insurance?
We got a vote to come out.
Oh,
We made a motion.
you have to
Okay.
say a motion
It's okay. I'll make a
It's 10
vote.
o'clock. It's over 10 o'clock. Yeah, we
Can we
understand.
vote on this?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Okay. Can we have a motion to give consent to the board's insurance carrier to negotiate the settlement of pending litigation against the Board of Education?
So moved.
Okay, that's, motion by Ms. Glass, second by Ms. McCown. All those in favor?
No discussion.
Do we have discussion of that?
You can.
You can't.
Just ask for it and,
Okay, any discussion?
no.
No.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Grant, will you get me a copy of that?
motion passes 5-0. Is there a motion to
So
adjourn
moved.
this meeting? Motion by Ms. Springate. Second by Mr. Brickler. All those in favor? Aye. 5-0. Thank you all.
Ms. Springate.
Hold on, we got one more meeting, guys.
Oh.
We got finance court.
Too soon.
Just legalities here.
Okay, so
gotta
I
open the
need to
meeting.
call to order the Woodford County District Finance Committee Corporation. Okay, called to order. First order of business is to elect the president.
That's typically the chair.
So that's typically the chair. Is there a motion to
I
elect?
make a motion to elect Mrs. McHale as the president of the finance board.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Ms., what is your name? Glass. Second by Mr. Brickler. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. What's
Opposed.
opposed? That's what I'm looking for. Motion passes 5-0. I think everybody voted. Okay, the next one is elect vice president. That would traditionally be Ms. Glass. Is there a motion to elect a vice president?
I make a motion to elect vice president.
Ms. McCowan has made the motion. Mr. Brickler has seconded that. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Next item is designate school district finance corporation secretary. That is typically the superintendent. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to elect the superintendent, the finance corp secretary.
Motion by Ms. McCowan,
Second.
second by Mr. Brickler. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Last one, designate school district finance corporation treasurer. That is Mr. Smith. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Ms. McCown. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do it by acclamation.
All right, so I think it was Ms. Glass and Ms. Springate.
And all in favor?
Vote? Aye. 5-0. Thank you all.